Okay, we'll call the May State Work Board session will now come to order. And we'll get to the roll in just a minute. Thank you for all your hard work so far today. I myself have information overload. But I thank everybody for all they've done today, and also to the staff for all they prepared for us. They've been busy. Oh, you're fine. You're fine. We were the ones that were wandering around. Yeah. Okay, I think we're ready. Denise, will you please call the roll?
Patricia Tim,
Yes.
Rachel Wise.
Yes.
Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Patrick McPherson,
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran.
Present.
John Witzel.
Yes.
Lisa Fricke,
Yes.
Patsy Kojans,
Here.
Commissioner Bloomstead.
Present.
All present.
Thank you. Information regarding the Open Meetings Act is posted on the east wall of this room on the south side of the door. Live web streaming will be available through the State Board of Education website, www.education.ne.gov/stateboard. I remind you to engage your microphones when speaking, turn them off when you are not, and please turn off all personal cell phones in the room. We will begin with board reports, dates, and discussion items, and Commissioner Bloomstead, strategic plan and AQuest.
So, I'm backing up on the right agenda item myself now. Yeah, obviously, we just, as we kind of keep working on the overall effort, thank you for taking a bit of time on kind of in the board retreat that we just came out of. Obviously, as we move those, several of those pieces along, I appreciate your information overload. Also with one thing I can tell you, as we walk through that, I think what I'm going to try to do, I know we didn't get to every item, I think we're going to try to actually get to that underneath the strategic planning committee's report and kind of wrap up our conversation so we can kind of keep moving through the agenda at this moment in time. So.
Good. Okay. This is where we usually have individual reports, since we've been out and about since the April board meeting. So we'll have a brief discussion around those events that have been attended by several board members. And I think we've talked about expediting expediting this particular part of the agenda, but we certainly want to know what you've been involved in. This month, as a whole, we had quite a few, well, I think all of us attended at least one stakeholder engagement event, the FFA breakfast and convention, the Cornerstone Awards. I think some of you will be able to be involved in the AQuest Data and Continuous Improvement meeting, and the Nebraska Educational Technology Association meeting and conference. So let's begin with the stakeholder engagements. Does anyone have any particular thing they'd like to mention about the one that was in their area?
Yeah. I got a comment. Lisa and I went out on our own, if you will. Or Lisa did, built kind of a homespun, if you will, engagement procedure, which worked out very, very well. We started out at the Latino Center of the Midlands in South Omaha, and Lisa did a very fine job in leading everyone through the process and gaining valuable feedback. As a matter of fact, we've also got scheduled events in North Omaha very, very soon that we're very excited about. So we will continue to strive for engagement, and I'll let Lisa describe her process.
I didn't plan on this. I thought what you just said was good enough. I just went back to my lesson plan ideas and make sure you have something to get their attention and let them know why, what's coming up. Tell them what you were going to tell them, and I think the activities went over pretty well. So, and John's expertise, I wouldn't do this alone because he has the history to answer questions that I may not. So I wouldn't be doing this by myself. We have great mentors on the board here. And so I think you said it all, so
Thank you, Lisa Didgrock, and we were blessed to have Rachel Wise there at our engagement, so thank you, Rachel.
I was an observer, and it was a pleasure to be, first of all, in Lisa's classroom. And I think a star pupil was John, but it was Lisa's classroom, and it was very nice to be there.
Well, thank you for doing that. That was stepping out and reaching out a little more, and I really appreciate that. We had the FFA breakfast and convention, and Rachel and Lisa and John and Maureen went to that. Does anybody have any thoughts on that was there?
I just think real quickly, on the breakfast or the award ceremony, again, hats off, not just to FFA, but to all of the student organizations this spring to get the opportunity to go and just to observe a little bit of the enthusiasm, but more importantly, the leadership
Yes.
in those student organizations like FFA. We are in such good hands with young people in this state, and I think it's evident in any of those student-based activities. So it was just a great opportunity.
Good. Okay, next did anybody else want to say anything? Lisa?
Still not used to this thing, but anyway, I had the opportunity to go to the Papillion La Vista 10-year vision plan, and they allowed me to sit in on the parent-student group, and that was really good. And then I also was able to have at John's behest, to attend a meeting with the superintendent at Papillion La Vista after that, and that was great. And that's about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we had the AQuest conference, and Patsy, Lisa, John, Rachel, and Maureen went. Does anybody have any comments on that one? Maureen?
I was there for the morning or the afternoon on the first day. First off, it's always great to see various administrators and teachers from across the state learning more. But I sat in on a session of the priority schools in which Rusty Rupert from Loup County and the principal from Druid Hill were there. The individual from Santee, they had a school board meeting that night, so it was kind of difficult to be in Kearney and get back to Santee in time. But I really appreciated hearing the true feelings that came out, especially from the administrators on, how they felt, especially from Mr. Rupert on, he was very honest to say, I wasn't very happy when I found out that I was a priority school. I felt like, everybody's pointing their fingers at me. And yet by the end of the session, he was there with the principal from Druid Hill and Kathleen Kennedy, who helped facilitate the meeting, the consultant, to say, if Dr. Bloomstead comes knocking on your door to say, you're a priority school, put out your arms and welcome them.
Oh, good.
And I really liked how it ended up
Very positive.
to hear that walk and that journey that they have taken to say, we've taken some lemons and we've turned them into lemonade, and we know we still have challenges and opportunities
Good.
ahead. So it
That's
was
good to
it was
hear.
great to hear as a board member.
Sure, absolutely. Patsy?
One of the meetings that I went to was for school academies, and it was a little school, Plattsmouth, which has about 500 students in their school. And afterwards, I stayed behind to talk to them about what they were doing and how interesting it was to me. And so they invited me to their school. So yesterday, I spent the whole day at Plattsmouth with them, and it was absolutely inspiring experience. The principal and the whole school is so excited about their academies and about their career readiness program, and they're part of one of the innovation grants, and they're using the money quite well. But listen to what as far as career readiness that they're doing, that's totally amazing. Within their school, They have a ROTC program in a school with 500 students. They're the one and only school that small in the United States that has a ROTC Air Force program. They have a culinary program, industrial tech program that works in the community. They collaborate with 29 businesses in their community, and kids can earn certificates in things like application. They can be interns for a trucking company there. They buy them all their tools. They pay them $19.50 to work for them per hour for their junior and senior years, and then help send them on to school.
Wow.
They have an agricultural program where you can get a certificate in application, and a CNA program where you can earn a certificate by the time you graduate for that. And I thought it was so cool how they said college and career ready, and it is the student's choice. And they were just so proud. As I was leaving, the industrial technology guy came running down the road, and he was going, wait, come back to my department. And he had been gone when I was there, and his principal said, she's got to go, she's got to pick up her granddaughter. And I stayed much longer, and he said, well, he said, you missed the best part. And I said, no, I've been there. But I felt that was the feeling, the total feeling in that school was that every teacher and every kid in every academy thought they were the best part, and that I shouldn't miss it. That's how glad they were happy that I was there to see their program. So the innovation grant was spent correctly, and schools are doing great things because this principal has put together these academies with not one new hire and not $1 of taxpayer money being spent. And I could tell you 50 other things about the school that they've done that with. So awesome experience.
Wonderful.
From AQuest. Grew out of that.
John, did you have something?
I'll make it very, very quick. In regards to the conference, I just got to thank the NDE staff for doing such a wonderful job in regards to setting it up. There were literally endless number of classes relating to our 6 tenets in AQuest. And if you will, the material they provided us going in with it was just outstanding. All the tenets were color-coded, so you could literally easily open it up, and if you belong to a tenant, responsible for a tenant, it's easy access to see where you probably would find your interest. So thank you.
Good.
Thank you, NDE staff.
Good. Okay. We also had the Nebraska Educational Technology Conference, and this was attended by Rachel and John and Patrick. So anyone have any comments? Rachel?
I'll just speak to, it's an outstanding conference, and it's 2 days, but I attended 1 day of the conference, and you just get a chance to see how schools are so effectively integrating, I don't want to just say technology, really digital thinking and digital resources, and I think that's so important. And then I attended one session with Dean Folkers. We happened to be in the same session, and I learned a little bit more about Future Ready, as well as some of the things we're doing in Nebraska. And I think that it really is important for us to keep on top of the direction that we're moving and the opportunities that we have to help our schools prepare students for the digital world that they're going to face. So again, it's a great conference, and I just loved the opportunity to be there.
Good.
Yeah, I attended the same conference and a number of the seminars, the Omaha Virtual School, which I thought was very interesting and offers us some ideas about the future, how to get parents informed. I was looking for more engagement issues there. And the group that talked about how we survived ACT online, which was, I thought, very informative, and they were, I think they gave me hope that this is going to work. It's working very well. So,
Well, good.
and I want to say one other thing. It's not really a group that I attended, but I'm sure that all of you got this from
Yes.
Wayne State, the Nebraska Civics, pamphlet that's being distributed to all fourth grade school children across the state. And I think that's amazing, and I think Randy Bertolis, PhD from Wayne State College, deserves a great deal of credit for this.
Absolutely.
It's just a wonderful
Absolutely.
asset.
Just one note on that, Randy, Dr. Bertolis was one of the few, though we had small numbers at Norfolk for the stakeholder engagement, he was one of the few that was there as well in the
Oh,
stakeholder
good.
engagement session in Norfolk, so.
Well, when I got that in the mail and was flipping through it, I'm thinking, gee, I wish I would have had this when I was in the fourth grade. It's got some great information in it for adults as well as.
A lot of things that I didn't know, to be honest.
Absolutely,
I thought I knew a
Patrick.
lot
No,
about
I
Nebraska
learned
history.
a lot through it. Yes, I understand. Okay, does anyone else have anything?
Just a quick comment. Yes, I went to the conference also, and it was outstanding. And also want to mention that our own Harris Payne was there at the representing NDE. So congratulations to him. Thank you, Julie Moore, the executive director for NETA. Thank you for her participation in gathering the 2,400 teachers at this event. But for me, the highlight was the ACT pilot program put on by South Sioux City. They gave a very, very good review of their experiences with the pilot program starting 5 years ago. And they were very, very upbeat about the future of ACT in our school. So thank you, South Sioux City.
Good, good. Molly?
I went to the NSCA Sesquicentennial celebration, and it was just marvelous. We have a wonderful collection of teachers across Nebraska. It was entertaining, educational, and it was really nice seeing a lot of legislators and fellow board members there. So thank you. Thank you so much.
It was a very nice event. I'm glad that so many of you could participate. Okay, we will move on, and we'll discuss requests for next month's meetings that we all go to.
Before we move on,
yep.
I gotta say thank you to a few of these stakeholders that I had meetings with and, if you will, functions with.
Sure.
If I could be quick, Pat, Tim, and I attended a staff meeting with Mike Delaney at the Nebraska Association of School Administrators. Thank you, Mike. Met with John Erickson at the Papillion La Vista School Foundation to discuss after-school programs. We're looking at something to mirror the collective youth program that already exists in the OPS area. The Nebraska Science Festival was just a huge success thanks to the University of Nebraska Medical Center. Week-long event spanned across the state, and it was just a lot of good participation, fun and all for everybody. Lisa and I had our quarterly meeting with Dr. Rickley at Papillion La Vista, and also we turned around and had our quarterly meeting with Dr. Rippey at Bellevue Public Schools. I was honored to attend the Early Childhood Center Program Scholarship presentation by Dr. Sam Meisels. And lastly, I gathered with school superintendents in the metro area and attending the Avenue Scholars Awards ceremony put on by Dr. Bird. And lastly, I got to give a thanks to Dr. John Schwartz at Papillion La Vista in regards to, we had a meeting in regards to ACT and MAP testing, and he was very, very happy to hear that interim assessment had been approved. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks to all of you for all of your attendance outside of coming to the board meeting. So that was very, very, very good. Now we'll talk about what's coming up with meetings and those who have made requests. I'm just going to go through the meetings, and if you have already said that you would like to attend, we've got that down. If there's something that you haven't said that you wanted to attend, please let Laura know by tomorrow. The Standing Bear Breakfast Commemoration is the 12th of May. There is a briefing on strategic plan and AQuest in Fremont at ESU 2. And John is going to represent us there. They asked for a presentation. Yeah, yeah, it went from here to here to, yeah, yeah. But we got someone, and we're very glad you're going. There's also the Nebraska Career Education Conference in June, the 5th through the 8th in Kearney. Administrator Days is coming up in July, the 26th through the 28th in Kearney, and then I believe the commissioner has
Yeah, I have one more to add that'll be on June 9th, and it's actually titled Disseminating and Sustaining Best Practices in School Mental Health. This is actually an invitation only. I was asked to attend, but also asked if there would be a couple board representatives that'd be willing to attend. So there's sites and we can maybe just gather that from you yet, or if I could get that from you. So there are 3 different sites. So ESU 3 in La Vista, ESU 10 in Kearney, and ESU 13 in Scottsbluff. And so I don't know if they put a limit on how many representatives from the board, so I'll double check that, but if you have an interest in it, if you
Please
me know.
let Matt know, and
Could you
and
give us
then,
the dates?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's June 9th. It's actually one date. They're doing it with
but it will be
with
across
video
the
conferencing.
state, so, and it is invitation only, so talk to the commissioner and let him know if you're interested in attending, and then he can make arrangements for you to attend. Okay, and if you have any other travel requests of things that you have seen, why please see Laura Donlin before tomorrow so we can put it on the list. Within your board packet is the monthly board travel expense report, and that is there for you to review. So we will now move on to 3.1, the consent agenda process. Governor, I almost called you. My apologies.
So I will just, I guess, kind of the basics, remind you there's a pink form to fill out if you had any items that you would like to pull off the consent agenda. Or, and by the way, if there's any other items you would want staff information for that we could organize for tomorrow morning and get you some additional information, we'd certainly be willing to do that. I'll keep going if you want me to
No, go right ahead.
So the report on rules, item 3.2, if you, and there's an attachment there, the only items right now I have to report on are all things that you've already taken action on or pending in front of the Attorney General's office for approval yet. So Rule 19, Rule 21, Rule 24, Rule 1, and the NDE personnel rules are all awaiting approval from the Attorney General, so.
Okay. Right, we'll move on to 3.3. And Donlin has some information from Nasbe and a couple of other things.
Sorry, you guys are moving so fast here. Each year, NASB has a call for awards that are given out at their national conference. And as board members, you are, encouraged to nominate a leader in the different areas that you might like to have honored at their national conference. So if you have someone in mind, we can work that process through me, and we can make sure we get that in. And then in addition, with NASB, we also have Patsy and Lisa signed up for the new board member orientation. As you know, Ryan Four will be transitioning into my role. He actually began that transition May 1st. Drove him right out of town. No. He already had previous travel for today. But he and I have already been working together, and we're meeting with the commissioner too as we transition into the new role. But he will be attending that as well. So I think that'll be great that he'll be, that was very helpful for me to get to go when Pat and Maureen and I went. So that will be in June 9th and 10th. Also, NASB has asked us to be a part of an early childhood network, and so Pat will be signing that tomorrow. We believe they're looking to Nebraska because we're a leader in this area, and Maureen kind of went to one of their sessions at the legislative conference. So, but we feel we will have a lot to learn from other states that are really focusing on early childhood. So that would be a $7,000 stipend annually for 2 years to be a part of that network. And then the only other thing I have is from earlier, we were kind of asked you to keep some notes. And so kind of the key questions that you had on your worksheet. So if you have some time to reflect tonight or tomorrow, if you want to get me any concerns that you might still have, that will really help us for future planning as we do some follow-up to our work that we already began. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Donna.
Thanks. And I'll be back next month.
Well, I certainly hope so.
And we're so effective in our work, I have an update on the rules. And it sounds like Rules 19 and 24 have been approved by the AG and sent on, maybe just the AG so far?
Yeah, they're in the Secretary of State.
So that's Secretary of State's office. See, that's how quickly we move.
Boy, we do. Wow, that's wonderful. All right, we're going to move to 3.4, and we are honored to have our Nebraska Teacher of the Year with us, Amy, and she's going to give us a little report about what has happened to her so far. Amy,
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me or should I move this?
just make sure the little light's on.
Yes, it's so good to be here. I have something. Do I push a button to get it?
Are you gonna share it?
Yes.
Then hit present.
Should know that. Well, I don't know if you feel this way seeing me here today, but I feel like I'm a completely different person in the last 5 months of my life. I've been inundated with professional development and learning and growing and meeting new people. So I'm so thankful to be here and share some of my experiences with you. All right, so I organized this by month. So back in November when I saw you last, about a week after I was named the Nebraska Teacher of the Year, I was the keynote presenter at the Nebraska Association of Teachers of Mathematics Pre-Professionals Conference. So these are students who are about to be teachers, and they come to learn about different strategies and become part of a network of teachers across Nebraska. And on the lower right, you'll see some familiar faces. On our NATM board, we have Shelby Auberg, the 2015 Nebraska Teacher of the Year. And Angie, why am I blanking on her name? 2013 Nebraska Teacher of the Year. So we had to get a picture together as the odd years Nebraska Teachers of the Year. Also in November, I was able to go to a Nebraska football game, my first Nebraska football game ever, by the way. And they were honoring teachers, and so I'm there with Hannah Houston and Hank Bounds, president of the university, and being on the radio at halftime. So you might have heard that little interview, just speaking about how teachers have influenced us and why we're passionate about the work that we do. In January, I was asked to come to UNL and speak at the Phi Lambda Theta. It was a kickoff event for them for the spring semester. This is a group at UNL who are going to be teachers. It's an honorary, so they have to qualify for this organization. And really just a question and answer session with them, talking about what it means to be a teacher on a day-to-day basis. So that was an exciting event. And I hope that you'll notice as we move through that I've gotten better at taking selfies, and I no longer have my thumb in the pictures after. So that's one thing I've learned, you know. February was huge, huge month for me. We went down to Dallas, the 55 state teachers of the year from all the states and territories, and had our induction program. So we learned what it means to be a teacher of the year, how to advocate. We learned a little bit about educational policy, how to have interviews, some media training. It was overwhelming and exhausting, but also exhilarating. And we had a special guest, Renee Zellweger was there, so I wanted to share that picture. The next picture to the left is Johanna Hayes, the 2016 National Teacher of the Year, who spoke at one of our events. And the pictures to the right seem a little bit more silly and lighthearted, and one of the challenges that we presented to each other after this event as Teachers of the Year was to own our title. And one of the things you learn is that you're never a past Teacher of the Year, and Patsy can speak to this, but I will always be the 2017 Nebraska State Teacher of the Year. And so we were challenged when we got on the plane to go home to introduce ourselves as such to the flight crew and ask for a picture in the cockpit. And so this is a picture of me completing that challenge. Yes, and it seems silly, but it's difficult for teachers sometimes to step out and actually own some recognition. We're very, we don't like to be in the spotlight, and that is me. And so it's very uncomfortable, and I felt empowered to step out and do that little challenge. This is one of my favorite quotes from Dallas. Embrace discomfort. When you are comfortable, you don't grow. And this is something that Katherine Bassett, this is the National Network of State Teachers of the Year organization. She is the president of that, and she spoke to us. And this also really just challenged me in the areas that I'm not as comfortable. I feel like I know instruction, I know what it means to be in a classroom and teach students in meaningful ways, but I'm not as comfortable in including myself in conversations of policy or advocating in different ways. And so that's one of the ways that I've been challenged to get outside my comfort zone. This is my homeroom. So we have smaller groups of Teachers of the Year that we were able to have more debriefing conversations in a smaller group. So this is my homeroom of teachers. And throughout the week in Dallas, we were challenged to come up with more of a platform. And I feel like there's a lot of things that we can talk about in regards to education. And for me, the thing that I'm most passionate about is what happens in the classroom for students every day. And so this has kind of become my driving motivation, the recruitment of retention of highly effective teachers so that every student in every classroom can have meaningful learning happening every day. Another way that I was challenged to step outside my comfort zone is to have more of a social media presence. And so this picture on the left is a photo booth that I created at Lincoln High in the math office. Just a backdrop to take selfies. Again, you'll notice there's no thumb in the picture. And to hashtag love teaching. This was the week of Valentine's Day, and there was a Twitter movement of teachers across the nation, actually across the world. If you hashtag love teaching, all of those pictures and statements about why we love what we do, we're all in one collection. So having a story of why you do what you do. And on the right, I was able to speak at the Educators Rising Conference, and these are high school students who have already decided that they want to be teachers someday. So they came to listen to me talk about what it means to be a teacher. In April, this has already been discussed. We had the AQuest conference in Kearney, and I did 2 presentations there. So you can get a snapshot of the color coding that was in the program that John was talking about. So I presented on formative assessment as well as professional learning communities, or PLCs, and I hope that the people who came to my sessions got something out of them, and it was a really exciting thing to be part of that I didn't even know happened. So. Last week I was in Washington, D.C. all week as part of our Washington Week event with CCSSO, and on Wednesday I was able to meet all of our senators and congressmen in Washington because they were in session. So all 5 of them come to this Nebraska breakfast event, which was a great way to be able to network, meet all of them at one time, and share with them why I do what I do and what we need in Nebraska for our students and for our teachers. I also visited ASCD, which is a professional development organization, and we were able to be in front of cameras, tell our stories about colleagues who inspire us, and this is one of my small groups that worked on those stories together. We also went to the White House, and this is my husband and I in front of the White House. The pictures that were actually in the Oval Office and in the West Wing were professional pictures that I don't have yet. So this is the picture to have evidence that I was there. I just don't have the Oval Office picture yet. But it was a surreal experience. Just feeling the history in the walls of the Oval Office was inspiring. I do have this one that has been publicized, but you can't really see me. So I have a hand on Vice President Mike Pence's shoulder and a hand on George's shoulder, and I'm like peeking around to the left of the desk there in the back. I don't know if you can see me. I can use this mouse maybe, right? There I am. Yeah, so I need to get better at pushing my way to the front, but Nebraska was there, and I hope I represented us well. The following day, we went to the U.S. Department of Education and heard from the Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, and from her, I don't remember his title, but her right-hand man. Yes, that sounds right. We were able to find out about initiatives that they're doing and ways that we can get involved on a larger scale. And we finished the week off with Gala, which was just an opportunity to, again, network with all of the sponsors of the Teacher of the Year program and hear from our National Teacher of the Year, who also needs to work on coming to the front because she's way back here. But she gave one of the best speeches that I've maybe ever heard in my life about why she cares about teaching and what she does to make learning meaningful for her students. And just to wrap it up, I say this all the time when I meet people from other states. I'm really proud of what we do here in Nebraska. I think you all do a great job keeping in mind what's important to teachers and to students every day. So Nebraska is just a great place to live, learn, and teach. So thank you. Do you have any questions?
Well, it sounds like your year has gotten off to a real start.
It is great. I couldn't have asked for a better start. I feel like I'm already just jumping out of my shell, and I'm so excited to share everything that I've learned.
How are your students handling it?
I've been gone a lot, but they're doing great. They love to hear stories, and I show them pictures, and I think it's interesting to them. I don't think students always think about that teachers are still learners as well. And so hearing the fact that I'm still learning and still growing and trying to be better for them, I think has been really inspiring for them.
Good. Well, it's kind of like I was a kindergarten teacher, and if they saw you in the grocery store, they were just amazed that
Yes.
you weren't still in the classroom.
Yes.
So that is kind of an eye-opener, I think, for the kids.
Yes.
That's good. Does anybody have any questions, Molly?
When you met with Secretary DeVos, did you have any impression of how her new leadership will affect Nebraska?
We didn't have very many opportunities to engage in meaningful conversation, but I did get the feeling when people did ask questions specifically about things that you hear about in the news, school choice, and what that means for our specific states and our specific students, she was very open to ideas and very willing to say, I'm still learning about that, and I still want to hear more about that. And so I extended an invitation to her to come out here to our great state, and so we'll see.
And I just have one request. As your year continues, if there's an area of policy that we can better support our teachers in Nebraska, will you please let Pat know or
Absolutely.
contact any of us? Because
Absolutely.
you're right in the field, and we do respect your insight as well.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Now we will move on to our standing committee reports, and Maureen with teaching and learning.
Okay, thank you. There was one discussion item and 4 action items in the Teaching and Learning Domain Committee meeting this morning. The discussion item related to the College, Career, and Civic Ready tenet and a presentation of a proposed draft of Nebraska's College and Career Ready Standards for Science. And Corey Epler and Sarah Cooper presented, got to partly present to us. We ran short of time, and they're going to provide an update to the board on the entire presentation, which I think you will find very interesting. So Corey and Sarah.
Thanks, Maureen. For the record, I'm Corey Epler, Chief Academic Officer for the department.
Hi, I'm Sarah Cooper, the Science Education Specialist for the department.
And it's hard to think about a year ago. It seems like it's been a year. We were here last May talking about the work that had been done relative to the science standards revision process. And so we're here today to give you an update. We're also here today to share the draft standards, knowing that there is still additional work to be done over the course of the summer. We anticipate we will be back with a revised draft in August, with the hope of state board approval in September. So there's still work to be done, but we wanted to present you with the draft and share with you some of the structural pieces in order for you to begin to make sense of the draft. One of the things that I'm going to start with is just this definition from Achieve around college and career readiness. And I shared this in the committee this morning, is that as we think about what it means to be college and career ready, it's important to consider that our graduates have the knowledge and skills necessary to qualify for and be successful in entry-level, credit-bearing, post-secondary coursework without the need for remediation, as required for their chosen career. So as we think about that, it's really critical that we have a strong alignment in conversations with the post-secondary institutions, so that when students graduate and go to the post-secondary institution, that they are ready for credit-bearing coursework and that they do not need remediation. So this is a common definition that guides our work around ELA, around mathematics, and now science. So I offer this as just the framework for the work that we're getting ready to share with you. What I think we're going to do is just walk through this document. So everyone has a copy of this. You either had it this morning or I put it at your desk. And we're just going to walk through a couple of pieces that are critical for understanding around the standards. And offer some challenges and solutions to the challenges that we see ahead, and then talk a little bit about the timeline and the public input survey moving forward. So if you'll look at page 3, a couple of pieces of information on page 3 that are important. And I will say for those viewing, this is available on the agenda. This is the document that's available online. So as we move forward with the college and career ready standards for science, we're operating off of a consistent structure across all content areas for standards. So we have standards and we have indicators. Beginning with the standards that were approved in the fall for physical education in the career and technical education areas, our team has said we want to make sure that no matter what content area, we're talking the same language. So the science standards writing team has been working to write standards, which are more of that broad statement that really reflect the cognitive, the affective, the psychomotor knowledge and skills we want students to learn. But those standards are also defined by a series of indicators. And the indicators really provide a level of specificity and also provide guidance for around assessment of learning. So as you look at the standards, you might say that's pretty broad, and that's exactly right. They're intended to be broad. The indicators below are what define the expectations for meeting the standard. So I just wanted to reference that that is a consistent format across all content areas as we move forward with standards revision. Also in the center of page 3 is just some of the information relative to the numbering structure. That will be helpful information. We again are moving to a consistent numbering system for all content area standards. So with the standards that were approved in the fall, they reflect the same structure. So you see what a K-8 standard in science would look like, as well as for the high school standards as well. As we move into the specifics around the college and career ready standards standards for science, it's important to understand that there was a great deal of intentionality in terms of how the content ultimately builds on itself and it remains developmentally appropriate. So the standards are organized by topic. And I'm going to turn you to page 42 and 43. If you look at the last 2 pages in this document, Appendix 1, this reflects the learning progressions that have been identified for the standards. The topics, you'll notice, are listed in the rows. So if you look at this table, the first row in that table represents the topics of forces and interactions. The second row is the second topic, waves. The third, structures and properties of matter. The columns reflect grade levels. So what I think this is a really great illustration of how the learning progresses and builds upon each other. And you'll see if you look at, for example, in kindergarten, they're not exploring all of the topics in kindergarten. They build on the knowledge that they learn in kindergarten as they move into first grade. And again, this information was outlined in the framework for K-12 science education, but also engaging our post-secondary subject matter experts in this as well. So we want the knowledge to be developmentally appropriate, as well as we want to make sure that it builds upon each other. So I wanted to reference the learning progressions as we talk about the standards themselves, because the standards in the science standards are organized by topics. Okay, hopefully that makes sense, and again, we can have conversations afterwards to clarify that as well. I'm going to let Sarah talk about one of the key features of the standards, which is a common stem that you'll notice each standard starts with.
So as you look through the document, you will see that all of the standards start with gather, analyze, and communicate. That STEM did come about very organically in our first meetings through the process as the team was working and thinking about what standards might look like. They were thinking about what they want students doing. And every team after that first day had something that was kind of like gather, analyze, and communicate. So as we dug deeper into what that means, all of those were chosen very, very carefully. One of the options for gather was obtain. And we had conversations around, well, obtain is very passive. I can sit and I can obtain information. Gathering requires that you go out and get it, and that you get it from multiple places, not just one. So gather was chosen there. We went through analyze and reason and evaluate, and landed on analyze because we talked about how analyzing is really getting you to very carefully examine evidence and information and data, and evaluate sounds like an assessment piece. So analyze was chosen very, very carefully. And of course, when we talk about communication, it's not just about verbally communicating, it's written communication. It's communicating with mathematical models. It's communicating with 3D models. So lots of ways that students can communicate their understanding and their lingering questions. So each STEM is gather, analyze, and communicate for those reasons.
And I think it's a great example, too, of how we're promoting higher level thinking within this broad standards, and getting students to begin thinking like a scientist, and helping them see that science isn't just a series of facts, that it is important for them to continue to discover and to analyze and to communicate. So that I think is really powerful as you think about the standards themselves. That's really setting that framework for getting students to think like a scientist and begin exploring in context of the science content. So as we move into the indicators, one of the key features of the indicators as we move to page 4 is this idea of a three-dimensional framework. And we referenced this a year ago, and the three-dimensional framework is an outgrowth of the K-12 vision for K-12 science education, that framework. And the indicators each include the three dimensions that are proposed in that. And I'll let Sarah talk a little bit more about that, and you can see on the chart, you can follow along there too in terms of what the three dimensions are.
So each of the indicators starts with the students being asked to engage in one of the practices. then followed by some ideas around the core idea, and through that lens of a pattern. So what is it? Are we looking at a system here? Are we trying to understand a system? But making sure that each one of the indicators brings those three ideas together, because the research really supports the learning of science is so crucial to embedding those three pieces together, that it's not just about learning the facts, that we want kids engaged in practicing science and engineering, which is embedded here, but thinking through that bigger context of the things that transpire across all of the science domains and even outside the boundaries of science, like patterns. There's patterns everywhere in our world, and if we start to understand what patterns tell us, we can take that knowledge with us and apply it to something new. So we really look at the practices and the cross-cutting concepts as giving kids tools to understand the content.
As we move to page 5, I'm particularly excited about the three pieces that are on page 5. So one of the challenges that we gave to our writing team was to think about these three specific type of connections that might be identifiable in the standards. The first are in the Nebraska connections. So how do we continue to make the standards relevant to what's happening within our own state and within our own community? And I think about the resource that you all visited from Wayne State. So thinking about Nebraska examples that continue to really drive home and ultimately help students learn the information within there. So the standards also have identified opportunities for Nebraska connections. The second one is around civic science connections. So in the conversations we've had relative to civics education, to civic readiness, and ultimately to civic engagement, the writing team identified places where there would be opportunities to utilize a civic science approach, which really begins to make a lot of sense. You think about how science is about solving problems and helping communities solve problems. So whether it's an issue with water or soils and even transportation or engineering, how all of those pieces ultimately impact our community. So those are identified within the standards too, of an opportunity for a teacher to actually create a civic science project that would ultimately help students master and learn the content, but also continue to promote the idea that civic engagement isn't something that happens in one classroom, it's something that happens and can happen within all classrooms within our schools. The third connection that we've identified are connections to computer science. And I think what's important to note about this is we often think that computer science is just coding, but it's really about computational thinking. So we've been really explicit to ensure that the computer science connections are really promoting the idea of computational thinking and how we get students to engage in that type of thinking and then ultimately being able to apply that information within the context of science. So as we move forward, I want to just, we'll show you what it looks like on page 7, and I'll have Sarah talk a little bit about the storylines and just the overall structure of the document before we talk about some challenges and solutions.
So each of our grade levels begins with what we're calling a storyline, and so the writers were thinking about when people pick up this document, they wanted it to tell the story of science, to tell what are kids going to explore in this grade level? What do these standards really mean? And it's about those kinds of questions that students will learn to answer through engaging in this learning. So each grade level starts with its own storyline that is tailored to meet the kinds of questions that might be asked that kids might be answering, but being explicit that this isn't it. This isn't what we're saying to do. You should capitalize on your student interests, your own passions, and what's going on in the world as questions. But here's some ideas of what's going to go on in this grade level.
And I will reference that K-8 are at the grade level, and then as we move into high school, they're organized by domains, which could be considered a grade span. There have been some questions about 12th grade or advanced topics, and we'll be real honest, is that we've got some work to do in that area over the course of the summer. We know that in physical education, we move to course-based standards at the secondary level. And with mathematics, we proposed advanced topics. Sarah and I have been having conversations among ourselves ourselves, but also with the post-secondary institutions around, is there a benefit of actually creating standards for specific courses that really are gateway courses into post-secondary education? So thinking about how we support advanced learning in science, with the understanding that the K-11 standards that you see here reflect standards for all students. But then also, how do we continue to provide additional opportunities for students to engage in additional science at the 12th grade year? One thing I might mention is we have, again, continue to work really closely with the university system and our post-secondary partners. We've been on multiple conference calls facilitated by Dr. Gabrielle Bannock, where we are actually with the university specifically, knowing that they will sign off on this document as college and career ready, ensuring that they feel comfortable with the content, and that when the content is mastered, would it set a student up for success to enter into entry-level coursework. And the dialogue has been really positive, and we're getting great feedback. And these are faculty and chemistry and faculty in microbiology and folks from the medical center. So they're giving us really specific feedback about the content and trying to make sure that it is an accurate representation of what they expect at the post-secondary level. So I'm going to just, again, a couple pieces as we start to wrap up. See if I can bring this up. So recognizing with this particular shift in standards, there are going to be some key challenges, and I don't like to offer challenges without some thoughts relative to solutions. So there will be some significant instructional shifts as a result of moving to a college and career-ready standards for science. We're going to, and Sarah's a great thinker and continues to engage her educators at a really deep level in thinking about what are the supporting documentation that our educators need. I want to note that we were intentional about putting educator there, not teachers. So as we think about after-school programs, as we think about career and technical student organizations, we want them to also, we want their programs to be using the science standards as well. So if we have a really great after-school program that's using a STEM philosophy, we want it to be grounded in the Nebraska science standards. So it's not just teachers we're providing this document for, it's educators. The middle school is going to be integrated. So as opposed to traditionally what might be a domain, the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade will be integrated. And I think we mentioned that when we were here last time. And that was a decision that the writing team actually came to themselves. And Sarah's really connected nationally as well, and I think a lot of states have made that shift, but it's been hard. I don't know what you might add relative to how they navigate that.
Yeah, so we're really excited to be able to partner with some other states as we look at what they've done and at least have those collaborations. We also, Lexington Middle School recently, within the last few years, has gone from a domain level middle school to integrated. Amber Dorsey was part of the writing team, and she's agreed to create a little video for us to share that story, because she talks about the original struggle with that, and yet seeing how good it was for the students and how that's paying off, and how they as teachers kind of had to take off their letters a little bit, you know, and put on that frame of reference of this is what's best for our kids and our students. And they're seeing that in Lexington, and she's happy to share that story.
The support for professional learning and instructional materials collaboration is important. So the work of our with our ESU science cadre, but also we have a lot of organizations that are creating instructional materials. So I think about within this building, the state office building, the Corn Board produces materials. UNL, the extension, they're producing materials. So we started to think about, why don't we just work together and be more collaborative? So instead of everybody creating their own, let's think about what's the greatest need and see how we can work together. And then another challenge is going to be assessment. As we think about a shift to a three-dimensional framework, we know that it's really critical that we build a science assessment system, and we referenced the EAG grant, which I believe was approved last month. So we think that will be great work to help us think through how we create a system of assessment relative to science. So there is great challenges ahead, but we're really hopeful as well. The last slide that I'll share is that we have been working with Matt Hastings' team, and we're really excited about this survey. So I'm going to just preview a couple of things about this survey. So the survey will be live hopefully by the end of the day.
Probably tomorrow morning.
Probably tomorrow morning. And we continue to think about, and look at there, look who's first on
Someone
the
you
screen.
should recognize.
Somebody you should recognize. So I won't play it, Patrick, but we asked Patrick he did a great job. We asked him to share of the importance of why should people complete this survey. So as they are able to listen to Patrick speak, there's a little introduction from Sarah, and then I think this is funny. Would you like to watch a short video by Corey? No. So I've got a little, if people choose to watch it, but then we've asked folks to identify what role they are, so a parent, guardian, an educator, a post-secondary representative, or general public, and then based on what they select, it's a different survey. And I think it was Lisa that brought up a point earlier that oftentimes we just hear the standards give us feedback, but a general public may not understand our education ease. So the surveys look different for each different role that folks identify. We've also allowed folks to select which grade level. So I think about my friends who have children in kindergarten. They may only want to provide feedback on the kindergarten and first grade standards. So this survey allows them to do that. If they want to do it on all of them, that's great. One thing I also might mention is that as you click on it and move to next, there is a short video from one of the writing team members that talks through the storyline, and basically is a 2-minute little listening opportunity to listen about what does this grade level standards really mean. So Sarah and I are not the brain power behind the mechanics of making that survey. We couldn't have done this without Matt Hastings and Kunal and Justine, and I think Yukino was part of that as well. So experts in survey methodology have actually helped us create this survey. So once the link is live, we'll definitely send that to you so you can share that out broadly. We hope this is a step in the right direction for capturing a broader set of input around standards. The last thing is I'll just talk about the timeline. Again, you can see some work that we've done in February and April and May. There will be multiple editing meetings as needed this summer. We'll continue to work with our post-secondary systems. I put public input meetings tentative in August because if we get 1,000 responses on a survey, that's better use of our time than hearing from 7 people over 7 sites morning and evening. So we're going to play that tentatively and really try to get as many folks via the survey, and then maybe we need to have a virtual town hall. We'll think about that as we get responses. Hopeful and confident we'll have a revised draft to you in August. And then anticipating state board approval in September. So, I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to Sarah. It's exciting to work with somebody who is visionary. Her passion comes out in everything that she does. And we have had an amazing team of Nebraska educators that have committed their heart and soul to this. And that's the fun part of the work, when Nebraska teachers sit around the table and say, how can we create a better opportunity for our students? My hope is that in June, we'll come back to the Teaching and Learning Committee just for additional discussion around the draft and what you see, and go from there. So.
Well, before I turn it over to the board for questions, I just want to say that please let the teachers that worked on this know how much we appreciate their dedication and commitment, because they've got full-time teaching jobs. They have families. They have lesson plans to do. They have to have a life, and here they are giving their passion, just like you, Sarah, with your vision. So tell them thank you very much.
Will do.
Very-
One of our writers was actually sad she had to miss some of the dates because she had a baby. Like she was going to come and she was like, had packed her bags and then decided to go to the hospital instead. So
Oh.
she was that
What-
committed.
So what board members have questions for the team? Rachel, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Maureen, and thank you, Sarah and Corey, for all your work in the presentation. 2 quick comments, and I think it's amazing the work you've done. One would be when you use the slide of the next steps and the things and the resources, hopefully that's a digital repository of those resources that you're looking at putting together, since so many
Yes.
that you mentioned are already done. It's a matter of maybe getting them in one repository for
Yeah.
ease of access. And then the other, I love the survey concept and what you've presented, but you didn't have a category for students. Is that a possibility? And particularly when you start to get to middle and high school students, it would be great to capture their voice, and they like surveys.
Yeah.
They're comfortable with the
I bet
technology.
Justine and Kanal can get that done by tomorrow morning.
It would be awesome to have an additional piece, whether it's now or down the road.
That's a great
But
suggestion.
truly a place for student voice. Thanks.
Patrick?
As you know, I'm concerned about parental engagement, among other things. But, you know, we talked this morning in one of our sessions, and we had responses, 8,800 responses from parents. You know, I just think it's so important that we do that. As I was looking at your survey, is there a way that, is it totally anonymous as it's written now? Is there a way
So-
that you could give folks an option to provide their name and their email so that you could use them in future opportunities to reach out? I'm just concerned about, we do surveys. Now, apparently, those 8,800 folks that we surveyed, we've got email addresses for.
at
We
the
know who they
It's
are.
at the end, yep.
So-
So at the end of the survey, we do ask that, we don't tell everyone you have to give us your email address. What we say is there will be additional opportunities. Are you interested in participating? If so, please give us your email address.
Okay. Well, I
There's
think
something
that's-
about if you want to participate and want more information.
I think that's really important, because if they're interested enough to respond to this, maybe they'll be interested enough to respond to other things that we want to talk to them about. And then I guess, I kind of promoted this idea, about how the politicians do the town halls, but I think that's still an interesting idea. If you could reach out to you could communicate with school boards and parents across the state through the media, and have an opportunity for them to actually call in and ask questions and give their comments. It probably would be cheaper in the long run to do that than it is to do those 7 locations where you have 14 meetings and 3 people show up. So I just encourage you to continue to get the engagement. I think that's important. I think you do a good job, certainly with the educators, and I think you've done a very good job with the business community. Maybe we could do a better job, from my assessment, with the political community and political leaders across the state. But beyond that, I think, please don't forget the engagement portion. It is so important.
Sarah and Corey, this is really exciting. I'd like you to look on page 5 for a moment. I know this is just amazing, the Nebraska connections, and it really goes hand in hand with the career tech and the future demands. For some reason, I've been puzzling about schools teaching what has existed for the last 2 decades instead of opportunities in science, technology, engineering, and math that haven't even been created. So I'm kind of wondering, as you develop these, if you could keep in mind how we can use the Nebraska connections for the, these career pathways and ag futures, et cetera, with the dual credit apprenticeships, and then maybe doing these connections as part of the personal learning plans in the portfolio for these students. I think if science becomes not just something like Big Bang Theory, but actually a bridge to possible futures, those 8,800 people that answered it was the 21st century surveys, they're all interested about connections for their kids' employability, but also happiness and joy. The civic science connection, I also wonder if Perkins grants can be used to integrate the civic science connections. I know there's been a lot of talk with legislators about infrastructure and roads, and you've all been going to Omaha when those roads are going bad. But wouldn't it be cool if actually could have high school kids engaged in infrastructure discussions and build it within the portfolio that is part of the other domain? And the last thing is, on page 6, implementation educator support. This is just the back of my mind. I'm thinking, if we're preparing our kids for jobs that exist now and haven't been developed, I hope there's some fiscal note, Matt, to page 6 to provide support for our teachers, because this is big, and we're going to need professional development and alignment, and it's going to be asking teachers to grow too. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Lisa?
Wow. Thank you for that. I was going to ask for the input that you did about it. Oh, yeah. I thought I heard a voice back there. Wasn't sure. But anyway, the idea of getting their email, that's taken care of. I was going to mention that. I was at Lexington when they first mentioned integrating the science, and we had just purchased new textbooks. Holy moly. They knew it was a good idea, but that's the kind of thing. So I think this repository is vital to the success of this, so that if they have newer textbooks, they can use it as a supplement to this integration. And in the survey, if you would ask if you know of any science resources, there might be business people out there, there might be actually researchers, people that you wouldn't even think of that know of resources outside our state that we could connect to, but it wouldn't hurt to say, do you know of any, and then, I don't know the wording to make sure it's valid to correct, to standards, but I just think you have the survey, why not start requesting great ideas for your repository?
Yep, definitely. Thank you.
Now I'm gonna turn it off.
Mine's just a quick statement, but your document, of course, I looked at it as a teacher and as a past student who really loves science. But what's, I think, most impressive about your document is that I could pick it up as a grandmother and as a parent as well and check it out, and it's not so full of teacher-ese kind of things, that I could understand it and know where my kindergarten granddaughter is going to be in science and follow her through, or my 8th grade grandson as well. So I think it's going to be a really useful document for the public. And so congratulations on that.
Thank you, Patsy.
Thanks, Corey. Appreciate it. I got 2 points. First question I have for you is, we've always been established that the standards, if you will, go to the districts and they pick up the curriculum. With this new indicators, does that change any of that in regards to? Not whatsoever.
No.
How will indicators be looked at by the districts?
We've always had standards and indicators, so I think that within, whether it's PE or CTE, they may not have been explicitly labeled in social studies or ELA or math, but
right.
Those multiple levels have always been there. So, and still the local school has the district, or the local district has the opportunity ultimately to determine how those standards and indicators are taught. So it's local control around curricular choices, and based on their students. So thinking about students with that are special education, or even our high ability learners, so that individual student level and the choice for instructional materials and resources still exist.
Okay. Corey, also I did some research in regards to looking back on the path in regards to a lot of our surveys from the past year, and I'm talking about No Child Left Behind, ESSA, AQuest, Strat Plan, Standards, Revision, and the 21st Century Survey, just to name a few of the, if you will, surveys you're responsible for, and engagement. We know that a couple of them are doing very, very well in regards to like the 21st century, and Revision, where we can't get enough. I mean, people are just going over themselves trying to get a slot in Revision. What makes these 2 surveys so incredibly good compared to others that maybe are not as popular?
I wish I had the answer.
Can we use the same mechanisms in regards to?
I'm not sure what they used for 21st century, and I'm assuming that was the evaluation work that was done from UNO.
Okay, that explains it.
But I also think that often we've seen this with employers to a certain extent, where there's a certain level of fatigue. And as we were working in Kearney for the science standards, we invited employers from that area to come in and provide input on the standards. And to be real honest, we struggled to get a group of 10 there. And as we started to think about why, think about what Kearney has done relative to their new high school and their approach and engaging businesses in the community. And our contact at Economic Development said, I think they're just tired of going to meetings. So sometimes I think it's just how do we engage them, and are we engaging them in a manner that would allow the most possible responses? So I think parents, it might be a different avenue than it would employers. Post-secondary, we've had conference calls with them versus just simply trying to get them to complete an electronic survey. It's on the phone for an hour and facilitating that. So I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all approach here, and I wish I had the answer, but I don't know. Those would be my suspicions.
Rachel.
If I can just add to that, I think one of the critical differences is the survey that was done for the 21st century was part of their evaluation process. And so parents really appreciate those after-school programs. I think you have to put it in context of it's providing an important service for kids and families that's looked at a little differently than thinking about the content of what is taught. And so I think it's more difficult in some areas to get engagement, whereas if the benefit, such as 21st century, has been a real benefit to the family, there's more likely to have that input and response.
That's true.
Just one more thought, you know, if you're whether you're talking about businesses or you're talking about educators, you know, we've got, you know, the Nebraska's, you know, State Chamber of Commerce. We've got the Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce. We've got a lot of those organizations where if you ask them to facilitate putting out your survey, if you ask, you know, the educational groups that we've all involved with, ask them to send it out to, you know, whether it be the gifted community or the technical community, ask them to be part of this and send it out, and ask their folks to respond to that. You know, you might find that working collaboration with some of those, and maybe you do that, I don't know, but, you know, just might result in a greater input from those particular sources.
I think that's a great point. We have a list of organizations that we'll send our little blurb to, and she's not here, Dr. Friesen, but I've got to say one of her great suggestions was sending a couple of sentences to principals that they would include it in their newsletters. That is parent-friendly, so we've got that ready to go too. Hopefully I'll be able to send that to every principal tomorrow. So principals, if you're watching, especially our elementary principals, put that in their newsletter where parents are engaged and they're reading it. So great point, and we'll be able to share the list of organizations that we reached out to. So we're going to work really hard to up those surveys.
Quick question, Lisa.
Just very quickly, can you, a lot of schools across Nebraska have websites, and they can take things down and put them up, you know, whenever they want. That might be another good way to
I'll
get
mention
that
that
up.
in the email to principals too.
Thank you.
I'll tell them to use Patrick's video.
Autographs available.
Thank you, Corey and
Thank
Sarah. We really appreciate this.
Good job. Thank you.
Going further with the Teaching and Learning Domain Committee meeting, all action items are related to assessment that we'll be working on, that we'll be acting on tomorrow. And committee members received information from Valerie Foy and Jeremy Henniger for the action items. And I'm going to ask Jeremy and Valerie to come forward for the discussion of the action items. And the first action item is to authorize the commissioner to contract with ACT for 2017-2018 for grade 11. Committee members received information from Valerie, and we've asked her to share this information with the rest of you. So Valerie?
Thank you.
So, for the record, I'm Valerie Foy, and I'm Director of Statewide Assessment.
And Jeremy Henniger, I'm the Assistant Director of Statewide Assessment.
And to introduce the topic of the ACT, I just wanted to briefly cover the first 3 contracts that we're going to talk about. One is for high school assessment, so that's the assessment of only our 11th grade students. The second contract that we're going to talk about that Jeremy's going to speak to is grades 3 through 8 and 11, and it's the alternate assessment. And the third assessment contract we're going to discuss is with NWEA, and that is for a general assessment for grades 3 through 8. There are 3 contracts here because of our RFP process and the taking in of bids on these. All of these assessments used to be under a single contract with Data Recognition Corporation. And so it looks like a lot, but it is really just the same testing that we have been doing. So first, to speak to the ACT contract, we released in the summer, July 2016, a request for proposal for a college entrance exam to be administered statewide to the juniors, to 11th graders. And we received 2 bids, ACT and SAT. This was our first year with the ACT. And we just finished our last day of testing for ACT was May 3rd. That was the paper pencil makeup date. And it really, we learned a lot, our districts learned a lot, but there was a very, very favorable response to use of the ACT. No one ever stopped me at a football game when we were giving NISA tests and said to me, is it really true that the state is paying for our kids to take the ACT? And I was like, yes, that's really true. And so I think that parents really did appreciate this service. And I do know our districts were very concerned over that they wanted students to they want to be sure they tested all students. So those students would have an ACT score. So they recognized the service to students. So we really worked hard to reach out. We always do, because of course it is in state statute to assess all of our students. But there was a real value added here, so we appreciated that. We just finished, so we have to calculate our participation. We have to get the results. But we worked with our Rule 18 and our program schools where students are placed in special programs to have testing available to those students, and of course in all of our districts. We had very strong participation and very much support for it. In general, most of our districts decided to participate paper pencil, but some did participate online, and for the most part that went really well. In fact, Jeremy just received an accolade from a district who said they would be willing to co-present with us on how well the online testing went for them. So we're really pleased about that. There are always pieces to be figured out about online testing and whitelisting and all these technical terms that they have. But ACT worked hard with our schools to get that set up correctly. And so we felt it was really a successful year for ACT testing. We do feel there was a certain amount of tension and reservation among our schools because no one wanted to do anything wrong so that an ACT score was invalidated. And I use as an example, we had a room in which the timer was set for 1 hour, the person proctoring it, but that person accidentally set it for 1 minute. So it went off after a minute, and he said, no, you have 59 more minutes, reset it, and we continued, and they were like, is that gonna be invalidated? And I'm like, I called ACT. They're like, no. So these little things. So, but there are very standardized procedures around the ACT. But the company helped us get information out. Our schools called and asked us questions. If we could answer them, we answered them. And if not, we got the answers from ACT. ACT also had 2 different helplines, one for accommodations and one for the actual testing. And I would tell you that if our districts, I believe, could tell you anything, they would say customer service from ACT was a little held up, the wait times. And I just had an ACT meeting in Iowa for the state directors of statewide administrations of ACT, and it is what was brought up foremost by every single state, and ACT is committed to addressing that. So the RFP that we're testing under this year, we have the ability to extend that for 1 year if we chose to. And we have made that decision to move forward with ACT for a second year. So what you're seeing here before you is the contract amount for the administration of the statewide assessment for ACT, along with some additional components. And one of the additional components is the ACT online prep. So that's a service that is an online service for students to not only take practice tests, because we didn't come before you last year and recommend it as a practice test site, but it has really strong instructional features. So when the students take practice tests, when there are certain skills or types of items that they score particularly low with or struggle with, the system provides them examples of those and then shows them how to solve them, and then gives them additional examples to practice more items like that, so that they can assure that they have that concept down. So we felt it was somewhat instructionally based. I just finished a phone call before coming in here about a school district, and they told me that they ran, there were 2 practice tests in there. They ran the first practice test in January, and then they gathered their high school faculty together. They went through the results and determined where are areas of weakness for our students and how can we instructionally support our students so that they're well instructed, because all of this is about improving learning, not ACT scores. So the system was used. We were a little disappointed it was not available and opened until December. But ACT has told us they're going to leave it open until next December for this whole class of students, because it didn't open until December. So those students will all have it available to them if they want to retake their ACT in their senior year. And so that we've included that as an option. I've sent an email out to DACS. We have an assessment and accountability advisory. We want to assure that our districts feel this is valuable and that they're using it to move forward with that. So those are the types of pieces that we've included here that are the optional type.
Are there any questions by board members? Molly?
Just 2 quick ones. We talked last year about NDE, whether we'd have access to the personal student surveys. Do we have access to that data?
Do you mean, do the students fill out this survey?
And can we access, because some of those are very like career oriented and.
Mm-hmm. And the answer is yes, on some of it we can access it.
Because that
Some of
might
it, we
help
have it
us to
masked.
know if we're doing a good job preparing them for that 11th grade test.
So we met with the data and research team and a number of other departments to determine what would be appropriate to have reported and to possibly be used for research. And so the commissioner was pretty aware. We went through a pretty thorough review of that before we accepted some of the data.
Yeah, so we did quite a bit of that review, and there, I think there was even an agreement we had to do with
There was an
ACT on
agreement.
top of that.
And then my only other question is, did we add any Nebraska questions that are in alignment with our standards?
No, the state statute says there can be no wraparound items added to the test.
Thank you.
Yes.
Lisa?
If you don't mind, Valerie, would you explain how many times this test is available and about the summative test? There was something that you said that was a cost savings earlier today, and also something about the availability of something.
Sure.
I'd like to hear that again.
That might be the NWEA proposal.
Yes, that was the other one.
Oh, that's the other one, yeah. Sorry.
No, that's
They just
okay.
pay if they have to take it again.
Patsy?
Right.
So I must have a need for humiliation or something, but is it possible for us to look at the ACT prep? Do we have that available to us to look at the preparation materials?
I can check to see if a demo could be set up for you. It is only accessible by password because it's a pay. So all of our free and reduced lunch students get it for free. Then the board voted to provide it to the rest of the students. So let me check with ACT on that. I'm sure they have a public demo of that. And I'll find what that is for you, okay, Patsy?
I think it would be very helpful and very interesting as well.
Let me check on that
All
for
right.
you. I'm sorry, we were given passwords so we could go in and look at what our districts were using and how many students used it, and so we actually could see the data, but let me find out about a demonstration site.
I'm just interested
Sure.
because I taught ACT prep.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, a while back, and I was interested to see how it made the transition between computer,
Sure,
video, that sort of
sure.
thing,
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
teacher,
I'll get a
face-to-face.
link of that for the board.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. How's the cost of this coming contract compare with last year?
Oh, it's very close. It's a very similar amount. It's
Okay. Well, it would be nice to see that when we're looking at these kind of things, just for evaluation purposes. Secondly, do students have the option, or parents have the option of opting their children out of this test? And has anybody done that?
some parents opt their students out of state testing, and parents can always do that.
Okay, and do we know, we don't have any idea what percentage of children would not have taken the test?
Not
At this
until-
point?
not at this
Okay, you'll
point,
have that
no.
later on?
I can have that.
Okay,
Mhm.
and attending that session on surviving the ACT, you mentioned they had used it on a computer basis, but they did point out a lot of issues that various schools have, I think, in using computers to take the AC test. What you said most of the schools opted for pencil and paper?
Most, and until all of the testing is done, we won't know what the percentages were, but we do know by far the majority opted for paper pencil this year.
Really?
The online, though, has been quickly catching on because the experience, for the most part, has been good. And there is a much larger window for testing if you test online because of the security of the test.
And then finally, I know the media is here, but I think it's very important that we let the folks in this state know that the department has picked up and the state has picked up the cost of doing this, and we're saving school districts money as well as parents' money in many cases, and I just think it's very important we let folks know that.
So,
Rachel?
Just to pick up on, actually, Lisa and Pat, even though we had the discussion about NWA earlier, I think that Lisa, you were making a good point, and Pat, that really, if my calculations are correct, which again, like my math earlier today, don't guarantee it, but I'm guessing it's somewhere around $1 million of value-added benefit by moving to the ACT for students or for schools. We had some schools that did pay for their students to take the ACT, but we also had many families that paid. So to Nebraskans, that's probably around $1 million benefit just on the test, not including the benefit of the test prep. I think it would be good for us to calculate out what that value does, because yes, the media is in the room, but more importantly, I think Nebraskans need to know that this was really a value-added process. It wasn't just a change in assessment, though it was a change in assessment that benefited students. Sure. The change also had a financial benefit to schools or to families, or a combination.
So that really is an excellent point, because I was just going to bring up, and in addition, we're providing the preparation for every single student in the state, and I think that that's really great. And you're right, it is a cost savings. And so when you ask me that question, I do want to add this, though. There are some additional costs on the contract this year. Our testing costs are about the same, but the additional costs on the contract are because we will do dual reporting. So one side of reporting is that these students are taking the ACT. They will get a score mailed to their house just as if they had gone in on a Saturday and taken the ACT that tells all their sub-scores and where they scored high and low and has all of that. It's the same public report that would go to them. But on the other side, we have another piece that we have to do, and that's our dual reporting. So here's the ACT score, but we have to use these scores for state accountability. So our current levels are below meets and exceeds. I do not know that those are going to be the names of the levels for the ACT. But we have a group of educators, NDE representatives, ESUs, and school district representatives that have been working on ACT standard setting, because that's what it's called. And they have been, I presented a report in December to the Teaching and Learning Committee, and Jeremy came and presented here. I don't know if the report got presented, was it? Okay, because my daughter got married that day, the next day. But, so, and I did go to that, so I missed that afternoon meeting. But they have been working on this. Now, we're not done yet because we're still bringing in post-secondary. We have some more work, but the dates are set for the final recommendation to be brought to you in August. Our meeting dates are in July, and we will take many things into account. We'll take the national benchmark scores. We will take what's called impact data. So we will have the results from this year's testing to know how many items the students got right on the different subtests of it. Jeremy, NAEP data and the past NISA data.
Right, yep.
Go ahead.
And we'll know from this year's ELA test how they did on the college and career ready ELA test from the NISA portion for 3 through 8, and so how that corresponds to the ACT, and that would make a difference potentially.
Right. So we will continue to work with these committee members and post-secondary as we move toward this ability to make a recommendation to bring to you in August. And again, we have not finally determined the names, but if you think of our current tests, it's like below, meets, and exceeds that we need to be able to report in 3 levels minimum. That's the requirement of ESSA and of state accountability to be able to do that. So that adds cost, Pat. That's all I'm saying is this dual reporting is part of the increases. Our state testing amount is very similar to last year, but I'd be happy to bring in more details tomorrow.
John, last question, quick.
I'll be very, very quick. I just want to make a comment in regards to with some superintendents this last week. They were commenting on the new ACT process in the schools, and they were very, very happy with the way it's been, if you will, run, the training they've gotten. And lastly, probably most important, that students that didn't even consider taking the ACT took it. They are very happy that they did. So,
Very good.
a lot of goals,
Glad to hear that.
a lot of benefits. Thank you, Valerie.
Well, as a result of this information, the Teaching and Learning Committee recommends authorizing the commissioner tomorrow to contract with ACT. The second action item is to authorize the commissioner to contract with Data Recognition Corporation, DCR, for 2017-2018 for alternate assessment for grades 3 through 8 and 11. And Jeremy presented information to the board. And Jeremy, do you want to give us a quick update?
Sure. So this proposal that we're bringing to you is for the alternate assessment for grades 3 through 8 and 11. That would include ELA, math, and science in the same grade configurations that we do right now. This test serves about 1% of our students. It's the students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. And as you'll hear in a minute, we're making a different suggestion in a different direction for the general assessment, but we think that maintaining the course for the alternate assessment is probably the best track after evaluating all the RFPs and everything. That's the recommendation of the group that evaluated the RFPs. One thing that I didn't mention is that This test is also aligned to our standards, but it's extended indicators. So we've done work to extend those indicators, take the indicators and the standards that you normally see for our general students and say, what are the underlying skills that are needed to be able to get to that level? And that's how the alignment of this test. That's had a huge impact on our classrooms and our teachers and what they're doing. They're still high and rigorous standards for these students, but they're more obtainable on their way to try to get to the full level of each standard. And so we've seen a lot of progress. We're going to continue to work with educators across the state, as we are with general as well, to work on the use of data and how to use the results from this to continue to have continual impact. It's already had a big impact, but we can continue to do better and continue to move forward as we're doing that. And that's a general theme of what we want to do based on AQuest and all of the assessment tenet pieces, is to continue to make sure that that has impact into instruction and curriculum decisions and everything. So that's what it is. So.
Any quick questions by the board, Patrick?
Just looking at the cost over the next several years, there's a lot of variation. It's like 1.6 this year, drops 500,000 next year, spikes up 300,000 the following, and then drops down and gradually goes up. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, there is. So some of it is the change. So every time there's a change in standards, there has to be a change in tests. So some of that corresponds with when we'll adopt science standards, for example, it goes up for a year. Usually in the first year of a contract, there are higher costs of getting things in order, and then they tend to drop down. There's generally some increase just in costs of doing business, go up over time. And so some of that is in there. One big change from that first year is this contract would also include support for the ELA peer review that we have to do this year. Since DRC's been our company, they're going to continue to help us with that. It increased that by about $68,000 for this first year, so that made that first year even a little bit higher. But then we wouldn't need that support in the subsequent years, so then that came out of there in those subsequent years. But that's the reason.
That makes good sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Molly, did you?
Two quick questions that aren't going to take long. Number one, the check for learning.
Microphone.
Check for learning. Are we still going to have that in cooperation for 3 through 8?
That's in the next contract we're going to talk about.
And
We'll
then
discuss
also, is there a writing component of this for the alternate assessments?
So alternate has never had a component where students actually write. It does have writing skills questions, so it would ask for these students, in some cases, it's about capitalization and punctuation and those types of things. So there's underlying writing skills, but the alternate test has never had a writing component where these kids write. For most of these students, that is a fairly high bar for them to get to. They might have some dictation or some sentences that they write. So the 1% population is our big. We have more diversity of skills in the 1% population than we do in the entire general population. So you go all the way from students that are non-responsive to students that are almost able to take the general assessment test. And so we have a great diversity of those students. And so talking about them in general is tough, because it doesn't always, when you talk about one set of students, you're not talking about all of them. Many of the students can't write at all, or would struggle to write at all. And so, but answer your question anyway. Yep.
Okay, as a result of this information, the committee recommends authorizing the commissioner to contract with the DCR for the alternate assessment. And as a side note, the committee will be exploring how data from the alternate assessment is used by schools and by districts. And moving on to the third action item is to authorize the commissioner to contract with Northwest Evaluation Association, NWEA, for the 2017-2018 year for assessment for grades 3 through 8. And Jeremy and Valerie, would you share just a bit of information on that?
So I'm going to introduce two pieces of this contract to discuss because I think you'll have quite a few questions, and then I just want to add a few more components. The two I want to talk about first is that through this RFP, NWEA is offering the NWEA MAP assessments. Now the MAP assessments, measurement of academic progress, are assessments that are available to our school districts, and about 80% of our districts, representing 50% of our schools, already use NWEA maps for their norm reference test. So this in no way requires any districts to give NWEA maps as their norm reference test. Districts may continue using any other norm reference test that they want to. However, free of charge to them, they will be offered the NWEA maps. They'll be able to take it. We have checked multiple times to make sure that the 3 times a year that are available on these districts' current contracts are available through this process, and that the tests that they are currently taking are available. Now, this is for grades 3 through 8 only, because it's what's covered in the RFP. So if they do like second grade maps, that's still in the district. This is 3 through 8. And to the point that you brought up, Rachel, so I just did some quick calculations on this.
Better
and
math.
just of the ones, and this is just an estimate, I would say that we are saving districts, if it had been this past year, about $900,000, close to $1 million. And if you add the rest of the students, it doubles, of course, so that's $1.8 million that we would be saving our districts. NWEA didn't build this into the RFP at any cost. There is no cost in the RFP on this. Our costs in the RFP are for the state summative test, and this is being included as a benefit to our school districts by selecting NWEA for this contract. So the second piece, in addition to the NWEA maps, which will be available to our districts, is the state summative test. So NWEA maps has never provided the state summative test. We are their first state test. But I do want you to know, we very carefully, and so when I say we had school districts reps, ESU reps, NDE reps, all evaluating these RFPs. And one of the things we looked for in a state that hasn't done state summative before are people that have experience in doing state summative testing. And we and the rest of the committee felt satisfied in the credentials that had been presented of the people who were going to provide the services around the summative assessment. We also knew how well liked NWEA Maps is by so many of our schools. So the summative assessment is in addition to the fall, winter, and spring testing, which is all optional, whatever the districts want to use. This is our state summative testing. The NISA testing goes away. This replaces it. But I do want to be clear about something. We own our items. We have been developing items for years, ever since 2009, when we began this statewide reading test. All of those items belong to us. All of those items are being passed over to NWEA, who will work with us to use those items. We do believe in the very beginning, at least the first year, that it will be a fixed form test, meaning it won't be adaptive. But we have built into the contract using Nebraska educators, because we rely on our Nebraska educators for their expertise and knowledge about our grade level content areas and schools to write items. And we built in, there's a lot of item writing in it, because adaptive testing takes more items than fixed form testing. You have to have more questions so that students can move up and down in the adaptive levels. So there, as soon as we have a contract and can turn over our items to NWEA, they're going to meet with us to determine how many items do they see, how many items would be needed to be adaptive, and how long do they believe it will take us to get there. So we are pretty sure, it'll be fixed form next year, but written right into the RFP and into the contract is the move to adaptive testing. In addition, we will be working with NWEA in how the MAPS testing relates to the end of the year summative testing to be predictive of the results, so that what they see in MAPS during the year is predictive of what will happen in the spring testing, but that's where they get the opportunity to improve student learning, to use the NWEA MAPS to not be predictive of what happens in the spring, but to absolutely strategize instruction to best serve students. So so we will begin that process with them. Then I also wanted to discuss the fact that the RFP also included the full vision of the board. So the board was very clear that we are not just about statewide summative assessment, that we're about interim, we're about formative, we're about good professional development. And we build a strong professional development component. And again, I gotta go back to we had a number of districts who helped give input into writing that RFP. So we sent sections out and we brought a group of educators in when we had a draft ready and went through it. And this was very helpful to us. But we built in a component for professional development that is really based on improving student learning, assessment literacy, how do formative and interim assessment inform summative assessment, and how are they related to just best serve our Nebraska students. So we built that in. We built in a rebranding of the test. So they've hired some people with expertise in branding because we're going to rebrand it. And then the other piece we built in is that we wanted our company to help us build really strong communications packages. So we really recognize the value of our communication department here at NDE, but also wanted to work with them for communications with our patrons, with our districts, with our students, student-friendly communication about what the summative tests mean, about what the testing package is. And so NWEA already has a really strong professional development presence in the state of Nebraska. They sent us a list of all the people that have been trainer of trainers. There are about, I think, 45 people already on that list that are trainer of trainers. And we built into it that they would continue to expand that and provide that to our districts, because a lot of that is through ESUs. So a lot of our smaller districts use their ESU for their PD. A lot of our larger districts provide their own PD, and we wanted the districts to have their choice. So we built that in too, but again, I have to credit our districts for getting that worded well in there so that we really ended up with a good product. So we really feel this is another example of providing good value to our districts. If you look at the amount of money that we can potentially save them, that they can put through redirect to really positive use in their district.
Any quick questions? Rachel?
Thank you, Maureen, and thank you, Valerie and Jeremy. This is transformational, where we've moved with NWA in this direction, providing maps as a resource with ACT. Thank you, Senator Speaker Scheer, for moving us with ACT. I think if you think about this short window of time, the transformation that's occurred in assessment, and I know you think about it because that workload has been on your shoulders. So thank both of you for really moving this forward and embracing the vision and direction that I think is good for Nebraska students and families and where we're moving with assessment. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lisa?
I echo everything that she said. You know, this is a lot of work, a lot of thought that's gone into this. And as a teacher, I valued the NISA testing because it was developed by teachers, but you didn't get the results until, what, August? And so it wasn't as effective as it could be, but with MAPS, it's almost immediate feedback. And plus, there are tutorials where kids can go in there, find out where their weakness is, and go in there and practice. So thank you for thoughtfully, you know, presenting this to us, and I greatly appreciate all the work that you've done to get all of this together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick?
So this is a 4-year contract.
It's a 5-year
5-year?
RFP.
Okay.
So each year the
Excuse
contract
me, I
is
meant-
renewable,
Okay,
yes.
all right. And just clarify, now, to the commissioner, again, $900,000 a year of savings to districts, but is there not also a savings to the districts in the form of of saving time on testing? Will some of them not end up, they won't be taking NISA, and if they're using what we're providing now, will there not be a savings as far as testing time to those districts?
Not necessarily on the 3 through 8.
Thank you, yeah.
Not necessarily on 3 through 8, but actually much more aligned, I think, is a substantial savings and probably some savings relative to familiarity with systems. And I can tell you in my recent travels around the state, one of the big concerns or thought processes, okay, a lot of people excited about moving this direction because they're already spending so much time in professional development here, and they see that alignment as being a real efficiency of that work. And I think, the other question, and I've heard it from a few teachers now, is, oh, gee, can we just stick with something now for a while? And so, I will tell you, I think I'm looking at this as a very long-term commitment in this approach. And because I think it's much more ingrained in what educational processes will be, I hope that becomes true. I hope that we can go for a long time with this approach.
And the ACT is definitely a testing time saver because all of these kids would have gone out on a Saturday morning and taken that test, and now it's done one time during the school year.
And we might see a reduction in test time depending on what happens since we're not there yet. Once it becomes adaptive, oftentimes that can be a shorter test, but we won't be assured of that until we get it developed. So we hesitate to say yes because we don't know yet. And so, but potentially it has that effect too. So we'll see once we get that transition done.
And Valerie, thank you for that last comment, because I think that's something we haven't taken into consideration, the fact that, the ACT is gonna save, definitely save testing time, and we're all concerned about the time that we hear time after time, how much testing we do. So that's a great, that's another great savings that's not included in the dollars.
Right.
It has to save a little bit of money because as teachers, we were often paid on Saturdays too. So, and there would be 3 or 4 of us, and we were paid to proctor the test, present and proctor the test, so.
Thank you, Mo, appreciate it. I sat down with the assistant superintendent and I asked him to show me all the mechanics that went along with ACT and MAP in regards to how it all worked and the forecasting and so forth. And you educators have used that on a daily basis, and I don't hear very many educators complaining about the amount of MAPS testing that they give their students because it's so productive. And if you will, it literally held the future for a lot of our children in regards to where they're going, what their needs are, just in a simple few tests, which is just incredible. So thank you very much. But also in regards to school districts, on behalf of a lot that I represent, they want to thank you for the interim assessment, the state taking care of it. They were very, very grateful for that. Thank you very much.
NWEA has never done a summative assessment, and we've had this repository and Check for Learning. Are they going to access some of those created questions to incorporate them in the summative assessment then?
Okay, they will take our secure items to use in the summative assessment. The Check for Learning
Just
items are
gone.
public. No, they're not gone.
Yeah. But
They're
will
not gone.
Will they use
We
them?
have an option in here that we're exploring right now for a formative assessment system that would pull in those items.
So in other words, I'm just thinking about, you don't want 2 tracks, because if you're doing maps for adaptive interim assessments, they're leading to a summative assessment that's in alignment. But if you have, they're creating the summative test, will they incorporate some of our questions from previous?
They will incorporate all of them that they can. So our secure items that are used on our NISA tests and that are stored in our bank as secure items, those are all being passed over to NWEA for potential use to be used in the state summative testing.
And so possibly teachers will still, before the summative assessment, be able to access Check for Learning if they wish?
It wouldn't be check for learning, no.
It'd be something
It-
called
exactly.
NWEA,
That- exactly,
summative,
exactly.
whatever.
Yep.
Okay, I just was a little confused if
So,
everything they'd created was
actually
gone.
though, Molly, really, your point is a good one, because we didn't spend a lot of time on the formative assessment. But our educators were concerned of having written thousands of items and having them become unusable. So we built that into the RFP. I know you're sick of hearing me say that, but we built that into the RFP, and NWEA had a solution for that, and we're negotiating with them, and that's in the cost. It's an option, so that's why these say up to an amount, because as we work through this, there are some decisions we'll need to make. So there is a formative, and that's what we're negotiating with them right now. There's the interim, which is the NWEA maps, and then there is the state summative testing.
NWA maps are free?
Yes, yes.
The committee recommends authorizing the commissioner to contract with NDEA for the grades 3 through 8 assessment. Finally, the committee heard information. We're getting there. Finally, the committee heard information from Valerie on the action item to grant the commissioner the authority to amend a contract with ACS Ventures for standards setting and independent alignment. And Valerie, can you give us a brief update?
Yep. Okay, so there are processes that are not only required, but which we greatly value in the state of Nebraska. So I don't think I've said this before, but when we wrote the RFP for the college entrance exam, we said the company had to commit to doing an alignment process with the state of Nebraska standards, because it's still in state law that we are aligned to Nebraska state standards. So ACT is coming here in May. They are bringing their secure test items. As I said, I can only assume handcuffed in a secure briefcase to their wrists. And ACS Ventures is leading the process by which our Nebraska educators will determine the items that our students took this spring, what Nebraska standards they are aligned to. We will be able to, from that, to produce a report that says the ACT tests these standards in the state of Nebraska. These were the ones they didn't test. And make no mistake though, no state test that we give tests all our state standards. It never has. We have a blueprint showing which standards are tested on a state summative test. And it will also, though, make evident if there are ACT standards and skills that aren't in our Nebraska standards that were included on that test. It will also let our educators know that. So that's one of the processes that ACS Ventures is helping us complete. And the alignment process, by the way, is also must be submitted for ESSA as an independent alignment process. So we can't run it. We can be there, we can't speak to it, we can't influence the educators' opinions on what's aligned there. It is our Nebraska educators' opinions. So it's this process that ACS Ventures is leading, and then also support for the ACT standard setting that's going to take place. So I just have to say this though, I do want you to know that through this whole process and from the input our districts and ESUs gave us, while we were going through a transition and while we were trying to meet a grander vision of how assessment could serve our students, it was also imperative that we not leave our Nebraska educators left out of the process. Therefore, they were involved in writing the RFPs and evaluating the RFPs. I don't know how much they appreciated that. They read thousands. The evaluators read thousands of pages in the months of December and January. I'm not sure what they did for Christmas, I really have to tell you. And then it's built in to do the alignment. It is built into our Nebraska educators to write all the items. It's built in for our Nebraska educators to do the standard setting. And so we felt that was of value in the state of Nebraska that we were not willing, even though we were going to a company which has more of a prepared test, NWA maps, that our summative one would still be influenced and written by our Nebraska educators. So that was our goal throughout. So when we have this contract with ACS Ventures, it is just bringing forth that goal, because these are all committees of educators that will be meeting, and a lot of these in the summertime. And we provide a very small stipend daily for them for
Good.
doing that, so.
Questions?
I know you don't want She's like, no more. When we were developing the standards for science, were they very cognizant of the ACT alignment?
We have had quite a bit of discussion around the ACT alignment, and I would tell you that science, and especially the the new science standards, there are some concerns about that. So we'll see what our educators say. The teaching and learning department told us that they would have the draft when we did the alignment.
So the ACS
and
bench will look at the
they
draft?
will look,
Okay.
yep, our
That's what I wondered.
educators will be using that draft, yep. But I don't know how that's going to come out.
Yeah.
Because ACT, let's face it, is a multiple choice
Yeah.
test, except for the writing component, and we do the writing component.
Any other questions? Well, the committee recommends granting the commissioner the authority to amend the contract with ACS. Valerie and Jeremy had 4 other action items they wanted us to work on, but I said.
You're kidding, aren't you?
Good choice, good
It
choice.
feels like it.
Yeah, wow.
You're killing me. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Well, this was a really important discussion. Yeah, very important discussion, and I appreciate all of you. Part of us got some of this information this morning, and then we wanted the rest of you to have the same opportunity. So yes, it was long, but it was a very important discussion with what we're doing right now. We have been sitting a little over 2 hours. I would be very happy to give you a very short break.
15 minutes?
No, it is not 15 minutes, Patrick. And then,
1 minute.
before you take off, Rachel, do you have any action items under legislation, or is this just discussion tomorrow?
It was just discussion.
Okay, so we could postpone it? Okay, I think we're going to move that, and our strategic planning report, again, is just discussion. So we're going to move that to tomorrow, because we do need to get through the rest of the action items before tomorrow. So, you got 5 minutes, guys. you like to report out on student success and access, please?
Yes, and I must say ours is much shorter and much more to the point, but no less interesting. And I do want to thank Mo. What your domain did was huge. It was life-changing. So I loved all the questions, and I know it was making you nervous, but positive partnerships will be quick. We will move quickly. 4.2.A.1 action item, approve the classification of interim program schools as approved to operate for the 2017-18 school year under NDE Rule 18. And Frida Lang, she's coming up, and she will do a very brief rationale of Rule 18 schools and the list. And you know, I think it would help my colleagues here if you talk a little bit about some of the highlights of our discussion.
Okay, well, we noted that with the interim programs, they all submit assurance statements, just as our public schools do, and we go through those to see if they're in compliance with Rule 18. Some of the highlights I think that we touched on were the fact that at this point there are 16 programs that we're looking at accrediting for this coming school year. That they range anywhere. We've had 24. This is the lowest at this point in time at 16. And I think a lot of that is because of the legislation that has been passed in the last year or so. So we do have fewer students in the programs. We were saying that on any given day, there's approximately 300 to 400 students housed within those 16 programs, with the majority of them being in the juvenile justice centers, and there's 4 of those at this point in time. There were 5. The one in Scottsbluff has closed as of this school year, and I think those are some of the highlights that we talked about.
Pat did ask a good question. Whether the programs have access to the students' information and lesson plans. And Matt, do you want to just in a little bullet point say what we're doing to make sure that the students' portfolio travels with them, so that when they go back, Patsy was really concerned about that their information would be immediately accessible.
Yeah, we did have a brief conversation about how we're trying to use data to actually be shared between interim program schools and with school districts. Sometimes that's sensitive data. And so we've really been working on that with our systems involved students, and also specifically with Rule 18 schools. So that's been an important part of that. There's been a history of kind of working with liaisons between those programs as well. And so we're trying to make sure that we're avoiding those gaps by at least using our data systems more effectively.
John.
Thank you, Molly. If my memory serves me right, in regards to after visiting in the Douglas County Youth Center, they use if you will, an education process or test called Portable Assisted Study Sequence. And there's been some questions in the past in regards to transferring this study material that is used and how it's transferred. I'll give you an example to Omaha Public Schools when they get out. There's always been somewhat of a question mark if the work that they do in the center is carried over into OPS. And there's been a lot, Matt, we've been involved in regards to that, whether or not OPS is, how hard they're looking at it, and whether we need to maybe change some rules to make pass acceptable.
Yeah,
All credits earned must be accepted by the school, though.
Yeah, I think it's partial credits is where some of the challenges have been. So
if they're
so
gone
working
20
on
days, they're not there
right,
a full
exactly.
interim
So
period.
there's some work to do on that front.
If I can speak to that, if we just had a little more statewide digital repository.
I was gonna guess.
And granted, digital access is a little bit of a problem for Douglas County. But I still think that's part of the challenge, is that we don't have uniformity in some of the supplemental curricular kinds of materials and processes used. And at times, the teacher available may not even be certified in that particular content area. So there's just, I think, more complexity, that, not to say there shouldn't be an answer or direction, but there's a lot of complexity in how our Rule 18 schools provide instruction through what curriculum and what resources they use. So,
Patsy?
Well, all students have a personal learning plan, or we're hoping that they do eventually have a PLP. And I've been to a bunch of schools now since I've started this job, and I see that almost at every single one. At Waverly the other day, I listened to one from a freshman who has already got a resume and all of that. So there has to be, for teachers, for students that are going to be out of their classrooms for 15 days possibly, that's what Frida told us it could be. That was the average usually.
15 to
and is that right, Frida? So if I'm teaching that student, I need to know when they come back where they've been as far as learning. And I would assume that the teacher that is working with them to start with needs to know where they are. And we have to do that because these students are students most of the time who are meeting enough challenges in this world without missing out completely on 15 days of education. So,
all right, I wanted to move forward. If Sharon Cott was here, she'd be nudging me in the ribs. So, oh, she's right there. Yeah. Okay, I'll approve to move forward for board consideration. And I do want to ask Frida one request too. When you if this passes, please thank the interim program schools, and then put a bug in their ear about making sure they have the personal learning plans that are digitally connected, and that we're supporting a state repository of digital resources. The board's working on that. Now we'll move to 21B. 21B is before action item, grant the commissioner authority to amend a contract with the excuse me, I'm in the wrong place. Yeah, sorry, Molly. Sorry. Approve accreditation for the educational service units appearing on the accompanying list for 2017-18 school year in accordance with the provisions of NDE Rule 84. Okay, Frida, go ahead.
Okay, there are 17 educational service units across the state. They are all under the accreditation rule of 84, and they submit assurance statements that document where they are, if there's any area they may not be in compliance. Well, whereas this year everyone is in compliance with Rule 84. In addition to this, every 5th year there is an external review that is done of the service units. This is staggered throughout the 5 years. So we look at all of the evidence that supports Rule 84 and such. There's, at this point in time, of the 17 service units, 13 of them are advanced ed, so they look at the educational service unit standards, and those are a full 3.5-day visit. So that's where we are with the service units.
Okay, just a comment. Pat brought out about the evolving role of the ESUs and whether they still have meaning and purpose. And we had a strong feeling as a committee that the ESUs really need to make sure gaps are filled, and so the equity is comparable, but the needs are different based on different regions. And instead of just responding with the latest tech, we need to make sure that they're in alignment with our plan for accountability in ESSA. All right, any other questions? Yes.
I just have a question, Frida. When the ESUs are up for accreditation or at some other time during the year, is there some kind of survey that goes out to the schools that they provide the services to? And if not, is that potential thing for the future? In that survey at the end, maybe could say maybe some areas that they would like to have help. Maybe the ESUs don't have trainers for that, but maybe could go outside and find what the schools that they're servicing, need.
At this point in time, whenever an external review is done, we look at what it is they are doing to evaluate their programs and services, and what the school districts programs are feeling or experiencing because of those services or lack of. So that is one of the areas that we look at. And at this point in time, there are a number of the service units that are working on what they call simple, which is an alignment of their services with AQuest, and then what is being done, what the schools are feeling about, how they are rating that, and then also the continued follow-up with it, so that when the service units are going out, it's not just a one-time, delivery, and then you go out, maybe it takes or not, but one of the areas that they are really looking at with the evaluation is how are we continuing to support this. So I think in answer to your question, there are you see varying degrees of evaluation from unit to unit, but it tends to be one of the improvement priorities that's listed in the the external reviews, and we're seeing some pretty sophisticated methods of looking at that they are working on at this point in time.
So what is the main way that they get the data from the schools? Is going in there and asking, like who are they asking, and how does that, you said that they're doing what the schools need, and they're getting information. How are they getting that information from the schools? From personal contact, interviews with certain people in the schools? How is that data collected?
There are a number of ways. One, what I see happening with most of the units at this point in time is the administrator, and in some cases it may be heads of their departments and such, going out, say towards the end of the school year, and visiting with the superintendent and then individuals in a district. And they will have a set of survey questions regarding what happened that school year. There are also a number of of advisory boards that they will be running. They also have their superintendent's meetings, their principals' meetings, where they will ask for input as far as what are their needs, as well as in some cases sharing with them what they are seeing as being needs that will be required, or that things that the schools will be needing to do, and these are ways that we as a service unit can support them. So there's multiple methods of gathering that information that I think are in effect. Not to say that in some cases couldn't be more standardized or improved, but there's multiple ways that they're doing that.
Okay, thank you. And we all approved to move forward with the board. We all approved to move forward for board consideration. Let's now go to the next item, and this has to do with 4.2B1, action item, grant the commissioner authority to approve funding recommendations for 2-year opportunity grants funded by Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant Program. And before I do this, I must apologize. The last item on the issue, I asked John if he would highlight some points on the issues. And John, do you mind if I go back to you for a moment?
I'll just be very, very quick.
Yes, no,
here.
go ahead.
In regards to ESUs, were initially established to provide cooperative service and buys and professional development. That was in the middle 60s. But ESUs have really evolved to a continuum of support with innovative and cooperative services that advance the efficiency, effectiveness, and excellence of the member school districts. And they've really expanded out, if you will, besides the principal professional development and co-op buying, they've really reached into technical services for their school districts, professional services such as therapists, and also special education. If I could give you one example of an ESU, and I'll use 3, they control 18 school districts' technical databases, if you will, their technical operations. So they act as the help desk for 18 school districts. With one school district, if they do not have to buy a help desk at their school, they can use the ESU 3. It saves them money, and 18 school districts use the same help desk. It's always available. They don't have to call somebody in or pay for an extra person. And the same goes for their student information systems. They control the 18 school districts. So they do save a lot of money for the schools. Thank you.
And you're also mentioning that telehealth might be a part of this, and the mental health component, the issues can provide support.
Good point, Molly, in regards to besides that, they take care of a lot of the distance learning for the school districts.
And we want to thank you for your service on the issues before you
It
came
was-
to the State Board of
Oh,
Ed.
yeah. Thank you, Molly.
Okay, and we'll move on now, and thank you for coming up. This is exciting. We're talking about transitions, and this is Grant Commissioner Authority to approve funding recommendations for 2-year opportunity grants funded by Expanding Learning Opportunity Grant Program. And we're going to talk about that now. Please inform us.
Yes. Well, I'm Jan Handa, and I'm the statewide coordinator for the 21st Century Community Learning Center grant program. These programs have long names, but they are connected. And so what you have before you is a slate of grants that have been recommended for funding, and the grant funds come from the 1% of the lottery proceeds. 2 sessions ago, the legislature made that change in the distribution of the lottery proceeds, and so the funds started accumulating on January 1st of 2016. And so we held a competition a couple of months ago, and we had an external review team that reviewed the proposals, and then they have recommended the grants that you see in front of you. And I do want to take a second to talk about 21st Century Community Learning Centers, because the statute specifically said the first priority of the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant Program is to continue existing 21st Century Community Learning Centers funded by the federal 21st Century Community Learning Center program in high-need districts that have a record of success. So to be eligible to apply for one of these Expanded Learning Opportunity grants, a program had to be in operation for over 5 years and be currently receiving a continuation grant from 21st Century. We had about 90 sites that were eligible to apply for this funding. And the slate that you have in front of you shows the 33 sites that are being recommended to receive this grant. The statute also specifies that the applicant can be either a school district or it can be a community-based organization. And that is a very key, vital piece in the success of our after-school programs. So you'll see on the list of the recommendations here, some of these are community-based organizations. One of them is from UNL, and we have others that are school districts, but either way, there must be a community-based organization that's partnering. The statute also required a 1-to-1 match. So the amounts you see listed here for the grant dollars will be matched by the various partners. And in a lot of cases, there are multiple partners coming to bear for these activities that are going to happen either after school or in the summer during a 21st Century program. And in particular, I want to point out who we serve in 21st Century. So the underlying statute for the 21st Century program is the Elementary Secondary Education Act. We were funded when it was No Child Left Behind. We are part of the reauthorization with ESSA. We're Title IV Part B of ESSA. It's a standalone program. And we receive an allocation annually. It's based on the population of high-need students in each state. So Nebraska being a rural state, we receive the minimum along with about 10 other states, but that is about $5.5 million per year that we are investing in these after-school and summer programs. But we target the high-need schools. So I wanted to just let you know that when applicants apply for a 21st Century grant, they must have a free reduced lunch rate of at least 40%. And then we give competitive priority points if they have a rate that is above 60% and an additional 5 points if it's above 80%. We give them 5 points if they have an AQUEST needs improvement classification. We also give extra points if they have a mobility or an English learner rate above the statewide average. And the next topic on your agenda, we'll get into more detail about our last year's report and the demographics of who we're serving. But I did want to point out that of the current 21st Century grants, 33 of our sites have that designation of needs improvement, and two of the 3 priority schools have a 21st Century Community Learning Center program grant. And of the slate of these ELO grants, the Expanded Learning Opportunity grants, 9 of these 33 sites are have the classification of needs improvement.
Right. And you'll notice this comes under the topic of transitions, and I think that when we talked about this whole expanded learning opportunities, there's science, technology, engineering, math, and art related. We have a STEM conversation. But also one thing that we got so many positive responses on your survey, over 8,800 parents, was because a lot of parents in Nebraska, both of them work. So these ELOs, these expanded learning opportunities, really provide not only an opportunity for quality, safe environment, good relationships with an adult, but also a connection with future job opportunities. So the whole committee, we approved to move forward with the board consideration. Is there any question about this? Okay. Right now, let's go to the next topic then. And this is 4.2 C.1, discuss 21st century, gotta get my little clicker back out here. Cancel. Okay, 4.2 C.1, 21st Century Community Learning Center report.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. And I've asked our statewide evaluator to join us. Would you introduce
Sure.
yourself?
I'm Jolene Johnson. I'm from UNMC, and I'm the statewide evaluator for 21st Century.
And you do have the electronic version of our 15-16 annual report, but we do have hard copies available. So if you'd like one, please grab one as Donlin is coming around. And as I already told you, we are awarding grants. We have been awarding grants for 14 years. So we have been at this for a while, so we've learned some things. And I wanted to show you just a map of where we're located across the state. And this was last year's data. But the icons that are in red indicate sites that received a first-time grant, a first-time 5-year 21st century grant. We had 33 of those sites last year. And then the ones in blue are on what we call continuation grants. They're the ones eligible for the lottery enhanced programming. We have 83 sites across the state that are receiving continuation funding, and that is funded at 50% of the level of the original grant. So those community partners are just vital to sustaining this type of activity if you want to keep it going for beyond the 5 years. And I also wanted to let you know that we are in alignment with the tenets of AQuest. When the stakeholder sessions were being put together a couple of years ago, we had a lot of 21st century folks who attended those and participated in the conversations, and we're very happy to see before and after school listed there. But we fit in all 6 of those tenets, and we actually had our project directors come together and help us craft this document in which we show the alignment of the 21st century program along with AQuest.
And it's the back 2 pages of your booklet. It's easier to read.
Thank you, thank you. And then I did want to mention too, the state board has a policy on an expanded learning opportunity program and what is a quality program. And we adhere to those principles, and we use that as we go out and talk to our brand new programs as they start up, that these are the quality indicators that we want to see in a program. And as Jolene presents our data, you'll get a sense of how that all looks.
Great. Thanks, Jen. All right, so first of all, we're going to talk about programming across the sites. And you can see homework is the #1 reported activity by programs, which makes sense. A lot of these programs, they have an homework time. But then you can see after that, arts and music, STEM, physical activity, 15% of the programs are saying, hey, we're doing something to focus on college and career readiness. So everything that we've been talking about, or you've been hearing about, these after-school programs are trying to get into. And when you think about the at-risk population, those bottom ones as far as counseling, drug prevention, and violence prevention, those are also important when we're looking at, these are challenging students, these are at risk, and these programs are trying to meet some of those needs. So this is the programming. When we look at the demographics, as Jan said, we are trying to serve the most at-risk students. And so if you look at that first chart there, the blue numbers are 21st century students. Over 19,000 are served, 68% qualify for free or reduced lunch, which is much higher than the state average. 18% have some sort of special education verification. 15% qualify for English learner. And then 61% are of an ethnic minority. So again, you can see that across the state, we're serving those at-risk students. And they're also in line with that national 21st century demographics. So we're in line with that. There are 3 core goals of 21st century. So when we talk about evaluation, we're trying to evaluate all of these. Improve student learning in 1 or more core academic areas. Increase social benefits and positive behavioral changes. And then that third one, increase family and community engagement. And I think you've heard a lot about that across all of education, right? How are we getting families and communities involved? Same thing here with 21st century. So when we talk about evaluation, it does have 3 purposes. We are looking at what are the outcomes. So what are student outcomes? How are they doing in the classroom? How are they doing behaviorally? Do they have friends? Do they feel safe? We look at all of those things. Continuous improvement. All of our programs get a snapshot yearly where they get all of their data back. They sit down, they have a meeting, they develop an action plan, and they reevaluate that action plan twice a year. So it is in line with the continuous improvement cycle that schools go through. And then we do get multiple stakeholder input. So we get surveys from teachers, from students, parents, and then community partners. This year we sent out a survey to over 800 community partners, and we already have, I think, 360 back. So a pretty good return rate on how those community partners are looking at 21st century. We really believe in a quality program, and so we have a couple of measures. This first, when you look to the right, that is a self-assessment. Programs rate their program on all of these different things. And then as a management team, we vary the professional development that is provided for 21st century. So if they're saying, hey, we need some more programming around enrichment, then that's what the team looks at to bring in. One thing that we were surprised about is if you look at that, 69% of program leaders and 34% of after-school staff have at least a 4-year degree. We were kind of surprised by that because nationally that is not the case. And so when we have qualified personnel, you're going to have a higher quality program. And the second thing is that we do have some programs that are providing a training ground for future teachers. So when we talk about educator effectiveness, these are future teachers who are going in and working in these programs, and they're doing it as like a practicum for like Chadron State and I think Doane University are 2 of the programs who are involved in this. So it's kind of a nice future programming for teachers. And so again, here's that 8,800 number that everybody's so excited about. So we do collect a lot of surveys, and parents are highly satisfied with the program. I think it comes back to they see it as a benefit, and somebody is safe. They know their child's cared for. They often have a snack that's nutritious, and so they're feeling like, great, this is a great place for my child to be. And then they are also reporting high levels of engagement with school. So you can see those parents are saying, hey, I do visit the school. I am supporting learning at home. I am reviewing homework. So it's kind of both things. They're satisfied with the program, and yet they're more engaged with school. We look at student outcomes in a couple of ways. Teachers are asked to provide input on both behavioral and academic. And this first one you can see is behavioral. So we look at, do they participate in class more? Are they more motivated to learn? And you can see that across the board we saw growth in every area, but we saw the most growth in class participation and academic performance across the year. So they are asked to reflect from fall to spring on the students who attend 21st century. And then we give student surveys, and I think this is a key slide because it's asking about more than schoolwork. It's asking about, hey, do you have future plans? Are you motivated to get good grades? Do you feel like you have friends? Do you feel like you have a sense of belonging? And what we found is that they do. They're motivated to get good grades. They want to go to college. A lot of them say, I feel like I belong at this club. I'm proud of this club. Connected to adults, and then safe. And so I think when you talk about at-risk learners, if they feel safe and they feel connected to an adult, they're going to want to come back and they're going to want to be engaged. And so I think that's key when we talk about student perceptions. And then statewide student outcomes for achievement. Here we use teacher survey data. We do not use the NISA just because we have to wait so long to get the assessment results. But we are looking at that because I think we need to show a little more of some causal data. So I think we will move in that direction. But and you can look there that when we talk about STEAM, as Molly would like us to call it now, you see teachers are saying science, that they're rating student skills the highest in science, and so that STEAM programming really is paying off when you look at, hey, how are they performing? How are they looking in the classroom? And so these are the results that get reported to the federal government. All of the teacher survey data gets reported to the federal government, and this year we have over 15,000 teacher surveys that will be reported to the federal government, so that's excellent data.
And if you look on page 6 on the bottom chart of the handout, it's amazing when you look at reading compared to the CLC attendance. This talked about data in every little graph from 3rd through 8th. They do better if they have participated in the after-school program. And I thought that was even true. I mean, it's cool that even math.
Right.
The big jump in math scores.
Yeah, and so this is specifically for Lincoln Community Learning Centers, in which they have their own evaluation department, and so they were very willing to share the data with me. But yeah, I think this is kind of that hard data that people are saying 21st century does not have. Well, if you look here, it's saying, yeah, it does have it. And when Lincoln Public looked across years, they saw a pattern. So it wasn't just one year that these students did better, it was across years. And so I think that's important to know.
And if you look at the front of this, Jolene wrote this. I mean, she's the big dog, Jolene Johnson.
I like that. That's going to be my new name.
Yeah, big dog. Thank you so much. And I told you I'd keep this short. I did want to highlight on page 37, Jolene and Jan have both has some recommendations, and one of it is adding a community partner collaboration tool. Sometimes in our school districts, high school kids drop out of the ELOs. And the 21st century programs. But if we add programs with leadership that cooperate with career tech education, it'd be a great place for apprenticeships after school. And then also professional development, areas of positive behavioral management. I know that we're not talking about legislation today, but I do want you to know that our 21st century community realized mental health is a huge component, it being proactive rather than reactive. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Any questions? Okay, yes.
I just wanted to thank you for working on this as a teacher who was asked to be a part of a program in central Nebraska. The head of that, there's a picture of her in here.
Oh.
And so anyway, what I loved about it, she'd invite teachers, different teachers throughout the year to come and be guests with our expertise in what I didn't knit or anything, but you know, like with drama or anything. So, and people from the community came in and did things, and I think the science, they were always doing manipulatives, and the kids are moving around, and I think, you know, that could be part of the reason that science is that they do different things than in the classroom.
It's very experiential and hands-on, so they're kind of getting dirty, and they're I mean, aquaponics and tower gardens and all of these things we're seeing. Yes, rockets is a big thing, right? And drones, yes.
And I'm a big fan of the CLCs and did work with Collective for Youth. And I think the piece that we have to keep in our forefront is, and why the surveys were answered and why they're good, is that many of the students that attend have a higher level of parent engagement. There's still a challenge in getting kids who are disengaged from school to a certain extent and that have other challenges to participate and be engaged. And that's no reflection on the school and the team work hard, but I think there's still a population of students that really would benefit from the programs that we aren't able to get there yet. And that's, I think, an ongoing piece we need to keep in the forefront, that we need to continue to think of strategies to engage youth who are disengaged, and their kids who have issues with attendance, and their kids who have a lot of challenges. We're sometimes missing those kids yet in those programs.
And I think actually some of the new programs that are coming out with the first year, or the ELOs that we did, just 1 year ELOs, we actually saw some attendance increases if they had highly engaging clubs. And so I think that's something we'll try to report back on next year, where if they had a club, there was one club that went from 40 kids to 90 the second semester.
It was cool.
So, I mean, I think there's some data that we haven't mined yet, but I think it's there. And so I think that's one thing that we'll look at is those new clubs and new opportunities. So you're right. Yep.
And with our secondary kids, we did notice there's a little bit of a dropout in the high school. But if we do connect with the dual credit and career tech ed and provide even apprenticeships where they get paid, people might go to school just so they can go to the expanded learning
Big
after
incentive.
school. Any
Yeah.
questions? Yes.
I'd like permission from the commissioner. I'd like to contact you about, there's a couple schools that are interested in getting a program like this going in their schools, and I'd like permission to sit up, talk with them. Thank you.
All right, I'm turning it back.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Great programs. Okay, I'm going to report on the policy committee meeting this morning. We have State Board Policy B13, which is involved with agendas, meeting materials for regular meetings. This is on the agenda as an action item tomorrow, and the proposed changes are consistent with State Board Policy D6, which is raising the board approval of renewals of contracts to $50,000 or more from the $25,000 or more. That's the change. So does anyone have any questions regarding that? I think the Finance Committee
We've
talked about this as
yeah,
well.
till blue in the face, yeah.
Okay, so we will recommend that for approval tomorrow. We are also discussed the proposed revisions to State Board Policy G21, which is our policy for coordinated school health. The proposed changes are recommended by Julaine Hill, our Coordinated School Health Director, and align with the comprehensive plan for coordinated school-based health on the whole school, whole community, whole child model developed by the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development and the U.S. Centers for Disease Control. Originally, when this policy was put together, it was based on the Centers for Disease Control. The changes are just including the current language that we have now about addressing the whole child, the whole community, and the whole school. And it's not changing the content or the intent of the policy in any way. It's just some verbiage that's more current. Molly?
Quick question. I know that I've had some superintendents ask about incorporating coordinated school health as some of the indicators for ESSA, Travis Miller from Baird, and you recommend we visit about it. Will that relate to this policy?
I think it probably could, and I suggested that maybe that be done, the discussion begin in a domain meeting.
Okay. But I think that's important as you're designing ESSA and our whole accountability
Sure.
program. We provide
Yeah, I think a good
reflection of
start,
this
I
policy.
think a good
Yeah,
start would be to talk about it.
That's definitely among kind of the list of those other possible indicators that I think we continue to kind of gather that feedback on, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so we are going to recommend that for approval tomorrow. And we have one item on the consent agenda, and we are asking for reaffirming the State Board Policy G20. And this is a model policy that the department has that's required by statute for schools to prevent dating violence. And there are no recommended changes. It will stay as is. So we're just asking that it be reaffirmed. Questions? Okay. We're going to postpone the report out on the legislative committee meeting this morning. They don't have any action items, but we do want to have an update from Rachel's committee tomorrow. We're also going to finish the discussion that we were having during strategic planning, some more from the retreat, and we will do that tomorrow as well. So John, we will move to you in Budget and Finance.
Thank you very much. The Budget and Finance Committee met this morning, and we were briefed by Bryce Wilson and Shane Ryan. We have 2 discussion items and 1 action item. Bryce, would you like to come up and give a brief summary on the action item? The action item is to authorize the commissioner to approve an IT contract for the disability determination section.
And this is really Mark. Mark, did you want to come up and talk about this at all?
Thank you.
We can tell you what they said, but Mark is more the expert in, this
Thank
is
you.
a DDS contract, so.
Okay, thank you. The contract is to continue services being provided by a former employee of DDS that the federal government, Social Security Administration, have been contracting with via an intermediate contractor. And it was determined it would save a lot of money if DDS were to contract directly with that person. That person designed this system and did the coding for it back in the 80s and retired about 1.5 years ago, and so that's how they've been able to maintain it. We're hopeful that that person can continue to support it until DDS is able to implement a federal system for this case processing system. So we're hopeful that we won't have to do this beyond this contract period.
Any questions? Comments? The committee voted unanimously to approve this action item, so thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Item on my, but we do, but it is going to be a. Oh, okay, all right, I got lost. Sorry.
Yeah, they're kind of not, got the discussion items first and then the action item.
Brief.
Okay, yeah, the brief. So the other two items that we have on there for discussion items, one is the MTW contract, and that's a renewal that is on the consent agenda tomorrow. That's a contract that's been in place since 2003, and I guess it's one that basically supports us what we use. They support our grants management system. Shane can get into, is there any other details of that you want?
We've been contracting with a vendor since 2003 that has provided grants management software for the No Child Left Behind and IDEA programs. And we are requesting that their contract be extended 1 more year. And per discussion with the committee, we're going to do an RFI to ensure that we're continuing to have the best value and the best software system out there possible. But we do need this contract renewed for the year, otherwise it would cause significant disruption to our grants management for those important programs.
Okay.
Any questions? No questions?
Well,
Did you have any?
I was thinking about asking to pull this from the consent agenda and move it to the, for approval of the board. It's not that I don't trust you, but I think when we've had a contract renewed for 14 years without an RFP, we may risk a higher cost, we may risk a lot of things, but I think we've got to do an RFI, a minimum, and an RFP, just for the sake of, good fiduciary business reasons, and I still would like to have that requirement attached to any approval of this item.
I've already talked to the vendor and let them know that we would need to do an RFI process moving forward, so we will definitely do that and explore all the opportunities that we have out there. And I've done a little bit of research this afternoon to see if there are any other vendors out there besides the one in Columbus that we talked about briefly this morning. So we will certainly work towards getting that information.
Well, if you'll do that and report back in next couple meetings on your progress on that, I'll just I'll forego asking that this be set aside from the consent agenda.
We'll definitely have some more information in June and August.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none? Thank you all.
Microphone.
That brings us to the end. Thank you very much for all your hard work. You put in a long day and got a lot accomplished. So we will adjourn the meeting. See you all in the morning. The regularly scheduled meeting of the State Board of Education will reconvene at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning in this room.